After some time, Han Li found a small, unremarkable monastery inside the city. The Taoist priest at the monastery was a mortal that completely lacked magic power. Han Li was quite satisfied with the location and gave some silver as alms to the priest, having decided to reside there for the time being. Following the arrival of the next morning, he left the monastery and discovered an academy with the presence of a cultivator. Since the academy opened in the Jin capital, it couldn't be considered to be small and was certain to have some backing. It was likely associated with a Confucian sect. However, Han Li didn't seem to care about this. After he snuck inside, he approached an elderly Confucian scholar and released the immense aura of his nascent soul-stage cultivation. When the old scholar sensed this, he felt the entirety of the magic power in his body freeze. Realizing Han Li's vast cultivation, he took a half step forward with a calm expression and saluted him. "Your presence honors the academy, senior. Is there anything I may help you with?" Han Li smiled and leisurely said, "You are quite tactful. I've sought you out for a few minor matters. Could you tell me about the markets in the Jin capital and a few things about the upcoming auction? You should know quite a bit considering you're a native cultivator." When the old scholar heard this, he promptly replied, "The location of the markets won't be a problem. I will immediately make a map for you. However, I don't know much about the auction. Is there anything specific Senior would like to know?" As he spoke, he took out a white jade slip from his storage pouch and began to inscribe the locations of the nearby markets onto it. Han Li's smile faded away, and he calmly said, "I'd like to know about the date and location of the auction, as well as any particularly rare materials that will appear." With a sincere tone, the old scholar answered, "The time and place won't be a problem. In 9 days, the auction will take place in the Western Market's treacherous pavilion. There will be 2 separate auctions for core formation and nascent soul cultivators held at different times. While nascent soul stage cultivators may participate in the core formation grade auction, core formation cultivators may not do the same. But I'm afraid I cannot answer what materials will be up for bid. The auction is far too great in scope as it is being hosted by many great clans. How could an outsider know what will be up for bid? But according to past auctions, there should be over 100 incredibly rare items. Additionally, a few seniors may also put up a few of their own rare items up for bid, extending the duration of the auction for up to a week." Han Li lowered his head and muttered, "So it was like that, the treacherous pavilion. Senior, I've already finished making the jade slip. Please take care of it." The old scholar then offered the jade slip with both hands. Han Li took it without another word, and gave a cursory sweep of it with his spiritual sense, before nodding with satisfaction. "Very good, and you'd better keep quiet about seeing me, otherwise." After letting out a sinister chuckle, Han Li glowed with azure light before suddenly disappearing without a trace. The old scholar widened his eyes and fell into the chair, as he sank into deep contemplation. After a long while, he swept his spiritual sense past the room and discovered that there was no one else there. He then let out a long sigh and wryly smiled. After Han Li left the academy, he looked through the white jade slip and made his way to the West Jin market. This market was located in a remote street in the western portion of the Jin capital and was hidden by a superior concealment spell formation. When Han Li arrived at the entrance, he easily walked through the hidden restrictions and arrived at a desolate street. Of course, it was only perceived as a desolate street by mortals. As for Han Li, he saw several hundreds of cultivators at the very least that were enter and leaving a few stores on the street. Han Li didn't sweep his spiritual sense through the street. As the auction was close at hand, there were certain to be nascent soul stage cultivators overseeing the market. Organizing such a large auction wasn't a laid-back affair after all. With that in mind, he slowly walked down the street and swept his gaze to either side. The West Jin market was clearly different from what he saw in the southern portion of the Jin capital. The buildings inside consisted of 2 or 3 stories, as if in a display of wealth. It seems like all the powerful businesses of the great Jin cultivation world established a storefront in the capital to display themselves. In that case, Han Li had no need to carefully choose which ones to browse. He promptly brought out a list of materials and began to ask about them at each of the stores. Of course, all the materials that he had yet to acquire were all incredibly rare. In fact, Han Li didn't have high hopes of easily finding theses materials and was only doing this in passing. He actually had different business to attend to in the market. Participating in the auction would certainly take up a large number of spirit stones. While Han Li originally possessed a great number of spirit stones, After he purchased a good number of materials as the masked cultivator, he had spent away most of them. Now that a large-scale auction appeared before him, he found himself short on spirit stones. Han Li had planned on finding a large shop to sell a few rare materials for spirit stones, as he would receive the most spirit stones from a wealthy store. At that moment, he arrived in front of a 3-story building and narrowed his eyes. The store was clearly much larger than its neighbors, and it was receiving quite a few visitors. Han Li then caught sight of the large sign that hung on its gates, writing the words Hidden Fortune Pavilion in large golden characters. It was the store that was known for its hidden fortunate rooms. He hesitated for a moment before walking inside. The first floor of the building was quite spacious and was over 100 meters wide. There were 60 handsome qi condensation servants that were welcoming guests and introducing a few of their wares to potential customers. When Han Li entered, a young servant walked up to him with a smile and was about to greet him. But then, a white-robed middle-aged man sitting at a corner of the room had taken notice of Han Li's cultivation. He immediately placed down the cup of tea he was drinking and hastily shouted, "Step down. I will be taking care of this senior." Afterwards, the middle-aged man tidied his clothes and saluted Han Li, respectfully saying, "We are honored to have senior at our Hidden Fortune Pavilion. Since the first floor won't have anything that will interest you, would you like to follow me to the 3rd floor?" Han Li's gaze flickered and he answered, "Yes, I came here to look for someone in charge in the first place." Then, he calmly followed the middle-aged man upstairs. When the customers on the 1st floor saw this, they raised an uproar, realizing Han Li was a nascent soul cultivator. "This is the first time I've seen a nascent soul stage senior, but why does he look so young? Looks like the Hidden Fortunate Pavilion is getting some big business." Shouts of praise and surprise continued to sound out below. The 3rd floor of the pavilion was small, but it was quite elegantly arranged and had 2 beautiful female cultivators waiting. When they saw the middle-aged man bringing up a guest, they immediately prepared a pot of tea. The middle-aged man waited for Han Li to sit down and waved his hand at the table with a smile. "Senior, please have a taste. This is the Mistrained Spirit Tea that our pavilion had acquired at a steep price. It had quite a unique flavor." Han Li ignored the tea and swept his sleeve past the table, placing a green jade slip on top of it. He calmly said, "There is no rush to taste the tea. Let's first see if you have any of the materials I wish to purchase. To tell the truth, I've already been to many stores and I wasn't able to find anything that I wanted. I'm not particularly hopeful that your Hidden Fortune Pavilion will have any of them either. Since Senior is in a hurry, I'll go ahead and have a look. Since you weren't able to find them elsewhere, they must be quite rare." The middle-aged man smiled and summoned the jade slip into his hand before he immersed his spiritual sense into it. Soon, his expression had changed with surprise, but Han Li's expression had remained unchanged. He had seen this reaction several times already when he showed the list to the other store owners. He wanted materials that were rarely ever seen in this world and were rarely heard of as well. The middle-aged man withdrew his spiritual sense from the jade slip and wryly smiled. It is no wonder that Senior wasn't able to find these materials from the previous stores. They are beyond the grasp of ordinary stores. As for our pavilion, we only have a small Thunderspirit crystal. Having expected more disappointment, Han Li wore an expression of delight when he heard this and said, "You have a Thunderspirit crystal." The middle-aged man hesitated for a moment and then explained, "That's right. Senior has come at a fortunate time. Our pavilion had just acquired the Thunderspirit crystal, but there will be a bit of trouble as it doesn't belong to us. Rather, a nascent soul cultivator with good relations to our pavilion has placed it in our care to exchange it for other materials. If the crystal isn't exchanged for other materials, it will be put up in the coming auction. Magic tools that are capable of expanding in size to create mansions and rooms. They're also capable of having spell formations placed inside of them." When Han Li heard about the conditions to acquire the Thunderspirit crystal, he rubbed his chin and asked, "An exchange? I actually have a few materials on hand that could be traded for it." When the white-robed middle-aged man heard Han Li, he handed over a jade slip that was previously prepared. "The materials and medicine pills that the crystal's owner wants in exchange are in here. Although it might be more common than some of the materials that Senior wishes to collect, it's still difficult to find in this world. Otherwise, the Thunderspirit crystal would have already been exchanged, as it's an ideal material for creating lightning attribute magic treasures." Han Li took the jade slip and immersed his spiritual sense into it without another thought. The middle-aged man carefully examined Han Li's expression, hoping to see through some of his thoughts, but his expression hadn't betrayed the slightest change or emotion. Rather, his calm demeanor disappointed the shopkeeper and even caused him to feel apprehensive. Just where did this senior hand come from? Not only is his appearance young, but the materials he's looking for are incredibly rare. Although there are many nascent soul cultivators with young appearances, most of them are female, and this man doesn't particularly appear to care about his clothes and appearance. Could he be a newly ascended nascent soul cultivator? Although the middle-aged shopkeeper could sense that Han Li was a nascent soul cultivator, he wasn't able to determine his precise cultivation. He could only determine that his presence was stronger than that of other early nascent soul cultivators he met before. As a result, he was attending to Han Li personally with great care. With the powers backing the Hidden Fortune Pavilion, he didn't need to treat ordinary nascent soul cultivators with excessive effort. A moment later, Han Li withdrew his spiritual sense from the jade slip and handed it back over. He then said, "I do have a few items that this fellow Taoist needs. However, I'll need to see the Thunder Spirit crystal before making the exchange. If the quality of the crystal is too lacking, I will not trade for it." With some thought, the shopkeeper smiled and said, "Of course, so how about this? Since this is a high-value trade, I will send a sound transmission talisman to Senior Fu, the owner of the Thunder Spirit Crystal, and you will be able to conduct the trade in person. He is currently residing nearby this market." After pondering a bit as well, Han Li said, "All right, I also wish to meet this fellow Taoist Fu. The more of these crystals I can acquire, the better. I also want to see whether he has more on hand." He thought that, since this old man Fu was able to acquire such a rare material, it was possible that he had other of these materials on hand. "In that case, I will go and send the message. Please wait for a moment, Senior Han. Senior Fu will arrive soon." The shopkeeper gave a salute and promptly left. Then Han Li finally decided to turn his attention to the tea on the table. He took a sip and found that its taste was quite unordinary. Soon the shopkeeper returned. Han Li then turned his attention to him and asked, "Does your store produce hidden fortune rooms in abundance? I've heard that your pavilion creates high-grade hidden fortune rooms, allowing one to carry miniaturized cave residences on one's palm, and that these rooms are attached with a few formidable restrictions. Is this true?" The shopkeeper chuckled and explained, "Hidden fortune rooms are indeed our specialty, but what Senior had described are the highest-grade hidden fortune rooms known as hidden fortune mansions. Since these mansions are refined from uncommon materials, few of them are ever produced. We have some in storage that aren't being sold, and all those we put on sale are all gone." Surprised by what he heard, Han Li asked, "Why aren't they being sold? Didn't your pavilion refine them for that purpose?" The middle-aged man explained with a trace of embarrassment, "I won't conceal this from Senior. The remaining hidden fortune mansions are of unrivaled quality. Be it their size or attached restrictions, they far exceed the ones that we had put for sale. As such, it was decided that they would be retained for the purpose of being traded for rare materials." With great interest, Han Li curled his lip and said, "That is quite surprising. If these hidden fortune mansions are as marvelous as you say, I might want to purchase one. Could you take them out and let me have a look?" With roused spirits, the shopkeeper hastily said, "Take them out. Senior must be joking. I am only a mere steward of this store, and I do not have the authority to use the treasure. It may only be taken out with Elder Wang's permission. Furthermore, we only keep one of them here at our main branch, and it is our pavilion's pride. The other mansions are located at our other branches." However, this hidden fortune mansion was personally created by our tool refinement Grandmaster Hua Yunzi, and should be ranked amongst the very best of its kind. Solely based on the restrictions attached to it, it is equivalent to a high-grade ancient treasure. If Senior is truly interested, I can immediately lead you to a hidden room, and Senior Han can continue the discussion with Elder Wang there. The materials needed to exchange for the room are also something that only he will know. From Han Li's bold tone, it appeared that he was truly interested. If this deal went through, then the shopkeeper's position in the Hidden Fortune Pavilion would sharply rise. "So it's like that, but I'll have." Just as Han Li spoke, his expression made a sudden change. The shopkeeper was shocked and hadn't realized what was going on. An old man's voice bellowed from below, "Youngster Zhao, is there truly someone that wishes to make a trade? I was in a crucial moment of my cultivation and cut it short to rush over here." Although his voice was aged, it was very clear and contained strength. Heavy thumping footsteps followed after he spoke. The shopkeeper hastily stood up and respectfully replied, "It is true, of course. I wouldn't dare to deceive you." A blur appeared at the third floor, to reveal a towering and bulky silhouette. Han Li narrowed his eyes and looked at who had just arrived. He was a large, black-robed old man with dark red skin. The astonishing spiritual chi fluctuations from his body revealed him to be a cultivator at the peak of mid-nascent soul stage. Han Li unconsciously frowned in surprise. When the red-faced old man heard the shopkeeper, he turned to look at Han Li with a trace of astonishment, noticing both cultivation and young appearance. He then walked forward with wide steps and heartily laughed. So this must be the fellow Taoist Han that you mentioned. Since he possessed something I wanted, he can't be an ordinary cultivator. Han Li stood up and saluted him with a smile. Not at all. Fellow Taoist Fu's cultivation has me in admiration of him. What is there to admire? I've only managed this far with age. The two cultivators then took a seat across from each other and old man Fu eagerly said, I'll get to the point. Could you tell me the items that you have for me? Han Li smiled and calmly said, a scarlet essence mushroom. It is over 1,000 years of maturity. This wasn't the same 3,000-year mushroom he traded for in the heavenly south. He had used one of its spores to nurture a new mushroom to 1,000 years of maturity. A scarlet essence mushroom. Old man Fu's expression lit up. If it is truly 1,000 years old, then I will exchange it for my Thunder Spirit crystal. Can fellow Taoist let me take a look? Of course, I'll take it out right now, but can you let me look at the crystal as well? I've been too eager. Of course you can. Old man Fu turned to the shopkeeper and commanded, Shopkeeper Zhao, take out the crystal for fellow Taoist Han. Yes, senior. The shopkeeper acknowledged the order and left the hall. The red-faced old man examined Han Li and curiously asked, Fellow Taoist Han, your appearance is quite unfamiliar, but your cultivation has already reached mid-nascent soul stage. Where have you come from? Have you always remained in bitter cultivation and rarely made contact with other cultivators? Why else would I have no impression of you despite your impressive spiritual power? Han Li smiled in response to the old man's curiosity and replied with a prepared answer, It is no surprise you wouldn't know of me. I've cultivated on a small island overseas. I rarely set foot on the great Jin mainland. Old man Fu paused in surprise and understandingly said, So you were an overseas cultivator. I truly respect you. I've long heard of overseas cultivators possessing many wondrous abilities, and that they cultivate a school of techniques different from cultivators of the mainland. I hope to exchange cultivation experiences with you. However, it appears fellow Taoist has traveled a very long distance to the Jin capital for the auction that will soon take place. As there were countless lands beyond the seas, it was no surprise that there were nascent soul cultivators who weren't well known. The old man had mostly accepted it as truth. After they chatted for a moment more, footsteps came from outside the hall and a bright voice said, Why haven't I been informed of Brother Fu's arrival at our Hidden Fortune Pavilion? And we have our guest fellow Taoist Han as well. I should have been there to personally welcome you. With that, a pale silver-robed cultivator entered the hall. When old man Fu saw the silver-robed cultivator, he called out to him with a familiar tone, He, Brother Wang rarely makes an appearance. I believe that you are still cultivating the turtle spirit arts in seclusion. How could I dare to disturb your cultivation? I had no choice but to stop cultivating the turtle spirit arts at the 7th layer. I reckon that I'll never reach mid-nascent soul stage in my lifetime. However, I have heard from shopkeeper Zhao that a fellow Taoist with mid-nascent soul cultivation had arrived, and that he wishes to purchase the hidden fortune mansion that we've kept in our possession for hundreds of years. With Brother Fu honoring our establishment with your presence as well, how could I not come and make an appearance? The silver-robed cultivator then turned to look at Han Li and saluted him with a smile. When Han Li heard their conversation, he knew this middle-aged silver-robed man was the elder Wang that the shopkeeper had mentioned. He swept his spiritual sense past him to find that he was an early nascent soul cultivator, with a pale complexion that appeared to be caused by a particular aspect of a technique. Han Li smiled and returned Elder Wang's salute. Brother Wang is being too polite. I've long heard of the grand reputation of your Hidden Fortune Pavilion and decided to pay a visit. When old man Fu heard this, he spoke with surprise. Fellow Taoist Han wishes to trade for a hidden fortune mansion. As expected of a cultivator from beyond the sea, you are truly magnanimous. It seems the rumors of many treasures across the sea are true. Fellow Taoists must be joking. There are few rare materials overseas, but it can't be compared to the rich land of the Jin Empire. Han Li's words didn't convince the two nascent soul cultivators, but they didn't bother to further pursue the topic of lands overseas. Else, If a high-grade cultivator like Han Li mistakenly believed them to be prying, it would be no laughing matter. At that moment, shopkeeper Zhao appeared behind the silver-robed cultivator. He placed two jade boxes in front of Han Li, one larger and the other smaller, and tactfully moved to the side. Since Elder Wang had made an appearance, there was no further need for him to speak. Elder Wang gestured at the larger of the two boxes and courteously said, "Since fellow Taoist Han is so interested in our pavilion's hidden fortune mansion, I've had the item brought here together with fellow Taoist Fu's Thunder Spirit Crystal. You may take a look at whichever you want." Old Man Fu grinned and hastily said, "Brother Wang, you will have plenty of time to discuss the hidden fortune mansion with fellow Taoist Han. However, I would like to finish our business first." Elder Wang wore a yielding smile and said, "That will be fine. Brother Fu did arrive first. I didn't know that you were in such a hurry. I am also quite interested in what fellow Taoist Han will use to trade for the Thunder Spirit Crystal." Han Li smiled as well when he heard this and slapped his storage pouch to summon a palm-sized green wooden box into his hand. It was sealed with a golden and a silver talisman. When Old Man Fu saw the wood box, his expression wavered. Han Li then placed the wooden box on the table and silently pushed it toward Old Man Fu. He took the box with excitement and brushed his sleeve towards the table, having the smaller of the two jade boxes move towards Han Li in turn. Han Li took the box into his hand with a pleased expression, and then opened it to reveal a dazzling silver-white light. Blue light flickered from his eyes, immediately allowing him to clearly see the item producing the light, a fist-sized silver-white stone. After examining it for a long while, he extended his finger towards it. A thread of azure light faintly shined from his finger, and with a shake of his wrist, the thread of light stabbed at the stone. When the light touched the rock, thunder rang out. Then, several thin arcs of lightning leaped out of the box and blocked the light. Han Li sighed and raised his head. With a slightly disappointed voice, he said, "Yes, this is indeed Thunder Spirit Crystal. It is a pity that its quality is only ordinary, but I'll have to make do. One of high quality isn't easily acquired. This piece of Thunder Spirit Crystal is only something that I barely managed to acquire with all my strength after discovering it in the stomach of a rare lightning attribute spirit beast." At that moment, Old Man Fu finished examining the scarlet essence mushroom and appeared quite pleased with it. Han Li calmly countered, "However, my scarlet essence mushroom is completely pure and is undoubtedly a top-grade medicinal plant." Although he wasn't about to let go of the Thunder Spirit Crystal, he also wasn't going to agree to an unfavorable trade. With complete openness, the old man agreed, "That is also right. With sole regards in price, my Thunder Spirit Crystal is inferior to your high-quality Scarlet Essence Mushroom. How about I give you 30,000 Spirit Stones to make up for it?" "No need to be so hasty, fellow Taoist Fu." Han Li chuckled and placed the Thunder Spirit Crystal back on the table. Then he took out a jade slip and passed it over to Old Man Fu. "How about you first take a look at this list? Perhaps you might have one of them or have information of one of them. If I can somehow acquire these materials, there is no need to give me spirit stones. Fellow Taoist Han has other materials he needs." Old Man Fu wore an expression of surprise and quickly took a look through the jade slip. At that moment, Elder Wang was looking at the mushroom in the old man's hands, and his eyes flickered as his mind wandered. Soon, the old man finished looking through the jade slip, and he gave Han Li an odd glance. He hesitated for a moment and then decisively said, "I'm afraid I must disappoint you. These materials are far too rare and I have none of them on hand. However, I can point you to a place where you might be able to find some of them." Han Li blinked and wore a mysterious smile. "Does fellow Taoist intend to point me in the direction of the coming auction?" Old Man Fu heartily laughed and said, "While the grand auction will be selling unordinary materials, it will be very unlikely that they will have items as rare as the ones you desire. After all, cultivators possessing items as rare as these would rather trade for them." Han Li's spirits were roused when he heard this and he quickly asked, "From your tone, it seems you mean to say there is a secret gathering of sorts." Old Man Fu wore an odd expression and then began to speak to Han Li through voice transmissions. "Fellow Taoist Han is truly a sensible person, but it isn't a secret meeting. When the decade auction takes place in the Jin capital, it is only natural for other gatherings to form around it. There are two main gatherings: the open trade fair held by righteous Tao sects in the markets that everyone knows about, and a secret underground trade fair conducted by the devil Tao. The items there often won't be purchased with spirit stones but with an exchange of items. Because there are so many rare items sold, The cultivation world had decreed a ban on it, and only those with knowledge of the cultivation world's underground know of it. This would be quite inconvenient for you as a foreign cultivator. But as part of the deal, I can give you a referral to this trade fair. Surely you'll have much to profit from it. With that said, the old man gave Han Li a solemn stare as he waited for his reply. Han Li frowned in thought and then said, "So it was like that. Then I must ask if these trade fairs will take place at the same time. Although I primarily wish to attend the underground trade fair, I don't want to miss the open one either." "It's simple," Old Man Fu replied. "Although both are convened at the same time, the rarest materials in the underground trade meet are deliberately displayed after the grand auction is concluded. Surely, the common materials will be beneath your notice. You won't have to worry about missing them." Without much further thought, Han Li quickly came to a decision and said, "Since that's the case, I'll do as you suggest. I'm greatly interested in this underground trade fair." Old Man Fu rejoiced at the opportunity of saving tens of thousands of spirit stones. "Good. I see that fellow Taoist Han is also a straightforward person. On the grand auction's last day, meet me outside the Hidden Fortune Pavilion." At that moment, they were no longer speaking through voice transmissions. As for Elder Wang, who was standing at the side, his heart stirred, but he managed to wear a beaming smile. With the Thunderstone Crystal and Scarlet Essence Mushroom exchanged, Elder Wang smiled and politely said, "Congratulations on reaching a deal. Fellow Taoist Han, would you like to now look at my pavilion's hidden fortune mansion? However, it will be far beyond the price of a single 1,000-year-old Scarlet Essence Mushroom." Han Li smiled and casually said, "So long as it is to my satisfaction, the price will be no matter." Elder Wang's smile grew wider upon hearing his bold tone. "Since fellow Taoist said this, I am convinced you are a foreign cultivator. It should be no problem to take out the Hidden Fortune Mansion for you. Please follow me to a spatial pocket that my pavilion refined. I'll show you the Hidden Fortune Mansion in its entirety." Han Li's heart stirred and he couldn't hide his astonishment. A spatial pocket. What fellow Taoist hadn't heard of a sanctuary pocket? Elder Wang patted his hand and then said, "Ah, I forgot. These secret techniques to produce spatial pockets had only been researched in the Great Jin 1,000 years ago. Since you're a foreigner, it is no wonder you wouldn't know of them. You can refine spatial tiers into spatial pockets. How did this nature-defying technique come to be?" Han Li's expression contorted in shocking disbelief. Techniques that affected space were all heaven-breaking and beyond profound. That being said, the most common magic tool and the most commonly seen use of spatial techniques were actually storage pouches. The higher grade the storage pouch, the more items it would be able to hold, but no matter the quality, it would never be truly considered a spatial pocket. There are many cultivators that believe that high-grade spatial techniques didn't exist in the mortal world, and only those from higher realms have the abilities to perform such profound techniques. This belief was commonly held by cultivators of the heavenly south. As a result, Han Li was deeply shocked to hear Elder Wang mention that a technique to refine spatial tiers had been discovered in the Great Jin over 1,000 years ago. Old Man Fu smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Han doesn't need to be so surprised. These so-called spatial pockets are not as profound as you think. They are but a mere trick." Elder Wang let out a wry chuckle and said, "That's right. To most people, spatial pockets are of little value to them. Not only are they extremely difficult to refine, but also have many restrictions in their usage as well. I'd say there are no more than a dozen places in the Great Jin that have artificial spatial pockets. My pavilion has perhaps the earliest spatial pocket created." "The earliest, you mean?" Han Li raised his brow in astonishment. Elder Wang answered, "That's right. This secret technique was originally produced by our pavilion's two tool refinement grandmasters, perhaps the only people in the world capable of refining spatial tiers. In truth, hidden fortune rooms and mansions were created with the spatial pocket refinement techniques that we've researched." Han Li chuckled and regained his composure. "So it was like that. Now I really want to see this mysterious spatial pocket." "Brother Wang, please go ahead. I've already seen this trick before. Since I have to deal with this Scarlet Essence Mushroom, I'll take my leave." Old Man Fu saluted the two after he said this. Elder Wang returned the salute and said, "Since Brother Fu has pressing matters at hand, I won't stop you. I'll see you another day." Old Man Fu then reminded Han Li with a sound transmission that he mustn't miss the last day of the underground trade fair. Han Li gave a casual nod before the old man left the hall with thumping steps. Elder Wang then courteously said, "Brother Han, let's go. The spatial pocket is at the back of the pavilion. We'll be there in the blink of an eye." Then, with a wave of his sleeve, the remaining jade box on the table disappeared without a trace. Naturally, Han Li agreed and followed him past a dense layer of restrictions, arriving at a small area at the rear of the pavilion. It was empty apart from a strange teleportation formation at the center of the room. It was significantly larger and more complicated than ordinary spell formations. Han Li faintly frowned in surprise. Sensing his confusion, Elder Wang explained, "The only way to reach to the spatial pocket is through a teleportation formation. You have to transfer there. Could it be that the spatial tier you refined is in a fixed location?" Though Han Li wore an astonished expression, it wouldn't be appropriate for him to pry too deeply into secret refinement techniques. Then, when he saw Elder Wang step into the teleportation formation, he hesitantly followed suit. As he got closer to the formation, he discovered that there were 8 mid-grade spirit stones surrounding it, signifying that it cost at least 800 low-grade spirit stones to use. If they needed to use a formation to return, the round trip would take over 1,000 spirit stones, something ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to afford. Just as Han Li's mind wandered, white light flashed from below, and the two disappeared without a trace. In the blink of an eye, dazzling light surrounded them as they arrived at another formation, placed on top a slope of shattered stone. After Han Li regained his bearings, he raised his head and looked around him. He saw the space spanned over 3 kilometers in area and was made of pure white stone, with variously sized holes littered throughout, varying in size from 3 meters to 30 meters in width. He took a deep breath and felt his heart grow restless. Not the slightest trace of green could be found throughout the space. The existence of spiritual chi was absent, and the sky was gray. It was clear the world was without life. After Elder Wang walked out from the formation, he said, "As fellow Taoist Han should have seen, this is a place without life and lacks the existence of worldly spiritual veins. It isn't comparable to the legendary spirit ether gardens said to possess spiritual chi that far exceeded the mortal world. Of all the spatial tears the great Jin cultivation world discovered, only 4 of them possessed the presence of spirit veins, but their spiritual chi wasn't nearly as dense as what is found in the mortal world. However, the sects that discovered these spatial tiers had all requested our services in creating a spatial pocket." Han Li stroked his chin with an odd expression and said, "From what you're saying, these spatial pockets have no specific purpose apart from saving a bit of space and allowing for free movement. It is no wonder why I haven't heard of them before." With a trace of embarrassment, Elder Wang quickly said, "That isn't entirely true. If a sect wished to place a few large items in secret, store a large number of materials, or hide someone without fear of pursuit, these spatial pockets are an optimal choice. They could even use it for the same purpose we do, as a testing area for magic tools and treasures. The reason why spatial pockets are rare is more due to a lack of suitable tiers. There are few known spatial tiers that have a fixed position, and even fewer sects that are in a suitable position to use them. Additionally, refining these spatial tiers requires an astonishing amount of resources. These are the reasons of why there are few spatial pockets." Han Li sighed with disappointment. "Even so, your spatial pockets are nothing like I had imagined. They cannot be carried on hand and can only be entered with teleportation formations. It isn't a guardian dimension by any means." Elder Wang chuckled. "How can someone carry a large spatial pocket on their body? I reckon only vastly powerful cultivators that ascended to the spirit realm or true immortals in the immortal realm have such heaven-defying abilities. How could that exist in the mortal realm? It already takes an absurd quantity of rare materials to stabilize an existing spatial tier, and this is an impressive breakthrough in itself." When Han Li heard this, his heart trembled and something suddenly came to mind. Can you stabilize a tier? Could one be damaged to near destruction and be strengthened afterwards? Elder Wang's expression stirred and his tone revealed astonishment. "Of course. So long as the spatial tier isn't completely collapsed, we can use materials to stabilize it. Could it be that fellow Taoists have plans on doing so?" Han Li chuckled and vaguely answered, "I know of one overseas, but it will soon collapse. I don't know if I'll be able to enter it." When Elder Wang heard Han Li's response to the matter, he tactfully kept silent. Then with a flip of his hand, he produced a jade box. "I will now release the hidden fortune mansion for you to inspect it. If you find it satisfactory, then we will further discuss trading for it." Han Li nodded. "Go ahead, fellow Taoist." With his agreement, Elder Wang didn't further hesitate and opened the jade box, revealing a pure white spiritual light. Before Han Li could clearly see what was inside, Elder Wang quickly uttered the incantation, and the box began to tremble. Suddenly, a ball of white light shot out and instantly grew larger until it was a colorless cloud the size of several fields. One could faintly see buildings of white jade within it. Elder Wang then formed an incantation gesture and pointed at the air, causing the white mist to tremble before suddenly dropping to the ground. A huge explosion sounded out and light shined within from every direction. A residence constructed completely from fine jade suddenly appeared. Li narrowed his eyes and examined the scene with his hands behind his back. This exquisite residence was clearly smaller when compared to common cave residences, but it had a tower, a courtyard, and a mist barrier of white light, causing it to appear like an otherworldly illusion. After staring at it for a long while, Li's figure blurred and he shot toward it in a streak of azure light. When Elder Wang saw this, he quickly flipped his hand and took out a white jade medallion. He shook the medallion at the residence, vanishing the barrier that covered it. Li then disappeared into the residence without obstruction. After the time it took to finish a meal, Li appeared in front of the jade residence with an unmoved expression. Elder Wang frowned for a moment, but when Li arrived in front of him, he smiled and asked, "Is the treasure to fellow Taoist Han's satisfaction?" The residence isn't large, but it has rooms for pill refinement, beast nurturing, and everything else I can think of. However, there is something that I'm unsure of. I'll need Brother Wang to explain it to me. If you have any questions relating to the Hidden Fortune Mansion, I will answer to the best of my ability, Elder Wang cheerfully replied. Li met his gaze and asked, "I'll be blunt then. I understand that the greatest advantage of the Hidden Fortune Mansion is that it can be enlarged and shrunk at will, allowing it to be easy to carry, but will it behave like a storage pouch and shrink the items that are already inside of it? And will spirit beasts properly shrink inside without a problem? The mansion is able to compress all furnishings that it was refined with, but living things like spirit beasts will not do. Even if they possessed profound transformation abilities, they would be destroyed from the spatial pressure of the mansion's reduction. Even if they are able to endure the immense pressure, they will be sealed from the outside world and disconnected from the world's spiritual qi, surely leading them to death." Elder Wang gave a full and honest explanation. After all, this was something that would be easily discovered with a bit of testing. After a moment of thought, Li added, "In that case, I would also have to store away the medicinal plants in the garden each time I put away the mansion. Is this correct?" Elder Wang frowned in thought and spoke with a blank expression. "That's right, fellow Taoist. This is an unsolvable problem for these hidden fortune mansions. Despite that, you are able to summon or send the mansion at your beck and call as a result of its attached restrictions. It is comparable to ordinary treasures in terms of value." Li smiled. "That's also one of the reasons I am interested in acquiring one, but I fear I might not have enough the means to acquire it." "You mean to say that you plan on trading for this item?" Elder Wang's eyes lit up with pleasant surprise. With an easy expression, Li said, "I have some rare materials on hand that I have no use for. Once you give me the clear details on the mansion's price, we can discuss what to specifically trade for. Of course, all of what we desire is in this jade slip. Please take a look." With a wide smile, his sleeve trembled as he sent a streak of white light towards Li. Li caught it, and then began to read it with his spiritual sense. 2 hours later, Li left the gates of the Hidden Fortune Pavilion with Elder Wang sending him off with a smile. Before departing, Li gave a salute back and uttered a few words of farewell. Elder Wang stared at Li's departing figure, and then returned inside the pavilion with a satisfied expression. Li was also smiling, as he stroked the bulging storage pouch at his waist. After he traded for the Hidden Fortune Mansion using a large number of rare materials, he took out a few demon cores and spirit herbs, and sold them for an astonishing amount of spirit stones. When he thought to sell even more materials, he saw the astonished look on Elder Wang's face and grew vigilant despite having found the scene humorous. As humans would often kill themselves over greed, Li believed that if he revealed any more wealth, it would surely attract trouble despite his status as a mid-nascent soul cultivator. Although the Hidden Fortune Pavilion had a grand reputation and should be reasonably trustworthy, he had to be especially careful since he was under the identity of an overseas cultivator. It was quite possible he had tempted Elder Wang into conspiring against him. With this in mind, Li had released a thread of spiritual sense into his surroundings after he left, ensuring that no one was following him. After shortly attending to this matter, he found an empty alleyway, and his body blurred as it underwent a sudden transformation with azure light shining from his clothes. When he emerged, he looked like a blue-robed middle-aged Confucian scholar with long facial hair and a bright face. Apart from late-nascent soul cultivators, nobody would be able to see through his true appearance. With this done, Han Li was able to continue browsing shops without worry, but to his disappointment, none of them had the materials he needed. It wasn't that the larger stores didn't have anything of value, rather that the materials the shopkeepers had recommended to Han Li weren't required for refining Monarch Soul Divergence's puppet body or the Triflame fan. And with no lack of ordinary ancient treasures either, he decided not to purchase any. Not long after, Han Li arrived at the end of the street and faced an imposing stone building. It seems we'll have to wait for the auction to convene. It was a simply decorated palace by the name of treacherous Hall. The scope of the building was colossal, as it consisted of 3 floors with each story stretching over 60 meters high. The huge building could fit over 1,000 cultivators, was probably the reason why the auction was being held there. There were several Foundation establishment cultivators standing guard at the entrance, preventing ordinary cultivators from entering as the auction was being prepared. In addition to Han Li, there were other cultivators that were loitering nearby the building, knowing that it was the location of the grand auction. Han Li took a deep glance at the treacherous hall and was about to leave when a group of 4 cultivators suddenly emerged from it. When Han Li saw them, his expression dramatically changed, and he turned around with feigned indifference, intending on leaving immediately. But just as he took a few steps, he could hear a sweet voice speaking from behind him. "Please wait, fellow Taoist." His heart sank and his cheek twitched before he decided to remain in place. After turning around, Han Li's expression remained calm as he said, "Do you have any business with me?" 20 meters away, there was a white-clothed woman with a face covered in a veil. She was currently examining him along with her 3 companions. He swept his spiritual sense past them to discover that they were all nascent soul-stage cultivators. Most notably, the middle-aged black-robed man standing behind her had mid-nascent soul cultivation like himself, causing Han Li to feel somewhat sullen. Seeing that she captured his attention for the time being, the white-clothed woman's eyes beamed and she said with a sweet tone, "No, I simply wish to befriend you since I saw your cultivation was unordinary. Does fellow Taoist mind?" From her tall stature and captivating movements, Han Li could tell she was no doubt a remarkably beautiful woman. However, he wasn't particularly flattered by her invitation. Rather, he wanted to immediately leave knowing the woman was the Endless Sky Saintess. "Befriend me? Are you serious? I would be honored to befriend a person of your cultivation and quality, but I have an urgent matter to attend to and cannot stay for long." Despite the apprehension he felt, Han Li retained a calm appearance and saluted them before turning around. In a blur, Endless Sky Saintess blocked Han Li's path and spoke with a frown. "There is no need for fellow Taoists to be in such a rush. I still have a few questions to ask you. Could you give me a moment?" Han Li's expression turned solemn and he spoke with a harsh tone. "Oh, you want to question me?" The black-robed cultivator lost his patience and asked, "Lady Lin, do you have a dispute with this fellow Taoist?" The black-robed cultivator lost his patience, and a layer of faint black chi began to cover his face. It was clear at a glance that he was a cultivator deeply skilled in devilish arts. The saintess brushed back the hair from her face and coldly stared at Han Li. "No, this is the first time that I've seen him, though he reminds me of the person that I've been seeking in the Great Jinn for these past years for some unknown reason. As such, I wish to make sure that I am not mistaken." The black-robed cultivator's handsome face suddenly contorted as he gazed at Han Li with a hostile gaze. "What? You mean to say this is the person who used my sect's ghost-sifting banner?" The saintess narrowed her eyes and said with an unwavering tone, "I'm not sure. His appearance and stature are different, but he gives me a similar impression. And the person I am looking for carries a bamboo tube on his back." A bamboo tube. When the black-robed devil cultivator saw this, his gaze dropped to the wrapped bundle on Han Li's back. Just as he attempted to look into it, he suddenly felt a powerful spiritual sense repel him. In his shock, he hastily withdrew it with an icy expression. "Fellow Taoist, I am the yin-sifting sect's Ji Tianhao. Could your esteemed self reveal what you are carrying on your back? So long as it isn't what we think, we won't continue to bother you." He spoke slowly and caution began to appear on his face. As for the other 2 similarly dressed cultivators in their party, they exchanged a glance and then blurred, appearing at Han Li's side to coerce him. Han Li remained silent as he stood in place with his hands held behind his back. Although nothing had actually happened yet, the air surged with suffocating hostility. At that moment, the surrounding core formation and foundation establishment cultivators took note of the incoming fight and the cultivation of those participating in it. They immediately scattered in alarm, none of them daring to stay and watch. In a battle between nascent soul stage cultivators, they were simply insects likely to die in the resulting crossfire. In the blink of an eye, all the bystanders had left, and the nearby buildings began to each employ their protective restrictions. Han Li's cheek twitched at the sight of this, and a layer of sparkling azure light rose up from his face, followed by an ominous glint shining from his eyes. When the four surrounding nascent soul cultivators saw this, they began to circulate their magic power in response, and the magic treasures in their bodies restlessly stirred. And Li thought of something and sneered. The azure light vanished from his face and he calmly said, "If I remember correctly, the West Jin market strictly prohibits fights between cultivators. Violating this will have 3 of the great Taoist sects and 4 of the great Buddhist sects pursue you. Do you want to find out what it feels like to be chased for thousands upon thousands of kilometers? Or do you feel like they are beneath your consideration, given your backing with the Yin sifting sect?" Just as Han Li finished speaking, an overbearing voice echoed from a distance, "HMPH, who dares ignore our rules? This humble Taoist is curious to meet them." Then 2 balls of light streaked from a building at the other end of the street, one silver and one gold. They quickly circled in the air before dropping down to reveal an old Taoist with a rosy complexion and graying hair, beside an ugly middle-aged Buddhist monk with a large flat nose. The old Taoist glared at Han Li and the saintess party with fury. "I know you. So it was esteemed cultivators of the Yin sifting sect. Does your sect plan on breaking our rules and having a battle in our West Jin market?" The Buddhist monk didn't appear to have anything to say, but he was far from pleased. He coldly stared at the Yin-sifting sect members, but when he caught sight of Han Li and the endless sky saintess, he revealed a trace of surprise. Although there were a number of unknown nascent soul cultivators in the Great Jin, it was quite rare to see an unknown mid-stage eccentric in particular. With the sight of 2 of those unknown eccentrics in front of him, it was no wonder he felt shocked. Ji Tianhao coldly said after hearing the old Taoist's words, "Wu Bai, I only wish to have this fellow Taoist verify a few things. Do you plan on meddling?" Wu Bai then imposingly said, "I don't care what you do, but none may break the rules of this market. If you truly wish to take action, then move to another place, or I won't keep being this polite." Enraged by his words, Ji Tianhao harshly said, "Could you wait until after we take action? I was thinking of experiencing the abilities of your Grand Truth sect." The Buddhist monk grinned and said, "Fellow Taoist Ji, there is no need to be angry. So long as nobody uses magic power, we will not interfere. These 2 Taoists also appear quite unfamiliar. Might you grant me your names?" "I am the endless sky saintess Lin Yinping. It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance. The matter is quite simple. I suspect this fellow Taoist is actually a great enemy of our endless sky temple, and I wish him to undo the bundle on his back and verify his identity. If I am mistaken, I will offer my deepest apologies and will bother him no further." With that said, she then turned to look at Han Li with her bright eyes. "That's funny," Han Li calmly said. "Who do you think I am? My surname is simply Li. Why do you want to verify my identity?" Lin Yinping curled her lips and a trace of killing intent flourished from her eyes. She said with an icy tone, "If fellow Taoist is unwilling, then it is possible you truly are our irreconcilable foe. As the endless sky saintess, I cannot allow you to run free." Wu Bai's heart stirred and he frowned, asking, "The endless sky saintess, you're the saintess of the soaring tribes." As for the Buddhist monk, astonishment appeared on his face. Lin Yinping calmly nodded, "I've made a poor showing of myself. Yes, I am indeed appointed as the tribe's saintess." Wu Bai ceased his angry appearance and spoke with a more relaxed tone. "Your noble tribe's immortal Su possesses heavenly talents and had entered mid-nascent soul stage before the age of 400. I had met him several times in the past. How is he doing?" Immortal Su is doing well. Around 30 years ago, he had entered late nascent soul stage and became one of the tribe's grand immortals. Lin Yinping inwardly rejoiced at the fact that this old Taoist had a friendship with one of her tribe's grand immortals. As I had anticipated, fellow Taoist Su had already entered late nascent soul stage. It may be possible for him to ascend to an entirely greater stage, given his young age. Wu Bai's expression grew peculiar as emotion began to show in his voice. Faintly feeling that this matter was turning for the worse, Han Li's mind began to quickly churn. Could it be that he would have to face off against these many nascent soul enemies, or would he have to escape using bloodshadow evasion? During his hesitation, he received a sound transmission of monarch soul divergence. Those few words had completely freed his heart of worry. Ubai had then finished speaking with the endless sky saintess about immortals. He swept his eyes towards Han Li and with some hesitation he asked, "Fellow Taoist, your cultivation is quite unordinary. Might I ask where you're from? Perhaps I can mediate in your dispute." Although he wasn't sure of his identity, Han Li was still a genuine mid-nascent soul cultivator. Vagrant cultivator or not, he was not someone to take lightly. "I've never heard that I'd have to give my identity and origins to enter the West Jin market. If your market truly has such a rule, I will naturally comply. But if there isn't, I would prefer not to answer." Han Li's expression had remained stiff, but he spoke with an obviously sarcastic tone. Wu Bai's expression grew sullen and was annoyed by his answer, but before he could give a reply, the Buddhist monk at his side chuckled and took the initiative to speak. "Our market has no such rules, of course. Fellow Taoist, Wu Bai only wished to use your identity to help you resolve this misunderstanding. If you are unwilling to explain yourself, then all we can do is make sure nothing happens within the market boundaries. But if fellow Taoist Lin and company were to wait at the market's entrance, which isn't within the scope of our protection." These words were spoken with a smile, but their meaning was clear. And Li coldly laughed in his mind. He swept his gaze past Ji Tianhao and the endless sky saintess and saw their eyes flickering. It was obvious that they were intent on attacking him for the possibility of acquiring the ghost-sifting banner and the holy beast's incarnation. Just as he thought this, Han Li stared at the endless sky saintess and gloomily asked, "So you will leave the matter be so long as you see what I have in my bundle? While you might not have any grievances with me, do you think my resentment is so easily dissolved with an apology? Are you threatening us?" Ji Tianhao's cold voice dripped with hostility. And Li bellowed with laughter and continued with a grim tone, "It was nothing but a jest. But if you truly are mistaken and force me to reveal my bundle for nothing, do you feel that I won't do anything to right this wrong? While I might not have great abilities, I have quite a bit of mastery over my evasion techniques. Even if you were to attack me all at once, I am quite confident I'll be able to escape. Don't blame me for what happens to your sex afterwards. As a lone cultivator, I don't fear retaliation." With that said, Ji Tianhao and the others had changed expressions. Even the Buddhist monk and old Taoist Wu Bai felt a bit of apprehension. Not only was Han Li a mid-nascent soul stage cultivator, but his attitude and words displayed him as a troublesome and vengeful character that all large sects make an effort to avoid. After all, with his cultivation and a lack of responsibility tying him down, he could act against the sect's various disciples and cause irreparable harm. It would be even more troublesome if this person was truly skilled in evasion techniques. Even a late nascent soul cultivator might not be enough to catch him. So long as this person was ruthless enough, even the entire 10 great devilish sects would find him difficult to manage. And as a vagrant mid-nascent soul cultivator, the great sects would attempt to draw him in with all their effort and would avoid offending him at all cost. If it was truly too late to stop him from becoming an enemy, then it would be better to hunt him down as soon as possible. Ji Tianhao and his sect members had decided to forcefully verify Han Li's identity on the behalf of requiring his sect's ghost-sifting banner. But immense problem would afflict his sect if he was mistaken, provoking vengeance upon nothing. With that thought, he couldn't help but take a glance at the endless sky saintess. She frowned, feeling quite a headache over the matter. If this man was a truly vengeful character, he would later wreak havoc in the endless sky plains. Then she blinked with bright eyes and wore a charming smile. "Why is fellow Taoist Li speaking with such a grave tone over a minor affair? We only wish to see what is inside the bundle on your back. If I have truly made a mistake, you can list a fair condition to make up for our error. Do you feel that is fair?" The endless sky saintess didn't wish to provoke a powerful enemy over a simple misunderstanding and offered a concession. "A condition?" Han Li coldly glanced at the woman with a blank expression. The saintess raised her head and calmly proposed, "If fellow Taoist Li is willing, I can compensate you with a sum of spirit stones as an apology." "He, not spirit stones." Han Li coldly laughed and suddenly grabbed the bundle on his back. His sudden movements captured the attention of the nearby cultivators. Han Li simply shook the bundle open for a sheathed saber to fall onto the ground. As soon as it appeared, A series of cries sounded out and it sparkled with golden light. From these traits, one could immediately tell it was an extremely rare treasure. It suddenly made sense to the others why Han Li would be furious at having his bundle forcefully opened, as it would reveal his beloved treasure to nosy outsiders. When the Saintess saw the sword, a trace of astonishment was betrayed from her eyes. She released her spiritual sense in disbelief and examined the saber for a long while before finding that there was nothing strange about it, not even the slightest trace of an illusion. When Ji Tianhao and his fellow sect members saw the saber, they exchanged a glance with one another, all of them feeling somewhat embarrassed. As a result of this matter, they had nearly committed a grave error. Fortunately, this conflict hadn't escalated and caused an unfair grudge to be held against his sect. The old Taoist Wu Bai and the Buddhist monk watched this with a silent smile, obviously distancing themselves from the affair. The Saintess sighed and a trace of disappointment appeared on her face. With an apologetic tone, she said, "It appears I've been mistaken. If you have any conditions, I will strive my hardest to fulfill them to your satisfaction." Han Li looked at her, and his eyes focused on an ornament she hung at her waist. "I already have enough spirit stones. How about you hand over that jade pendant?" She looked at pendant with complete bewilderment. And she wore it on her body. It was no ordinary ornament. It was an exquisite butterfly-shaped jade ornament that was a rare support-type magic tool and had an effect of focusing one's mind. However, this item was only precious to Foundation establishment and core formation cultivators. To a mid-nascent soul cultivator, its effects would be negligible. The Saintess only valued this treasure as it was a possession she kept throughout her life. What reason could he possibly want the jade pendant? She fiddled with the jade pendant with a hesitant expression. Han Li's eyes flickered and he readily suggested, "What does fellow Taoist Lin hate to part with it? Then, let's change it. How about that pearl hairpin?" The Saintess raised her brow and suddenly came to a decision, tossing the jade pendant over to Han Li. "Of course you can have it, it's only a trifling magic tool. I was simply being a bit sentimental." Han Li caught the ornament and felt a warm sensation. He nodded with satisfaction and made it disappear with a flip of his hand. Afterwards, he beckoned to the golden saber and it flew into his hand with a hum. A gray cloth leaped out from his sleeve and quickly covered it back into a bundle. With it now placed on his back, he turned around and made his way to the market entrance. When the others saw his cold demeanor, they couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. As Han Li was about to leave, the Saintess suddenly thought of something and asked, "We still don't know of your esteemed name. Could you give it to us?" "I'm a vagrant cultivator from overseas, Li Feiyu." Without slowing his footsteps, he indifferently shouted as he walked away. "Li Feiyu, brother Ji, have you ever heard of such a fierce cultivator from overseas? I know many people, but none as heartless as him." The Saintess stared at Han Li's back and a cold glint flickered from her eyes. While she couldn't place it, she wasn't able to dispel her doubts about the bundle and still felt uneasy. Ji Tianhao's expression turned unsightly due to his words and said, "Lady Lin's question is quite difficult for me to answer. Although the cultivators overseas technically belong to the great Jin's cultivation world, they are quite independent and few of them ever set foot on this mainland. Additionally, their circumstances are greatly varied. Countless vagrant eccentrics and factions of all sizes exist, not to mention the many grand cultivators that have yet to reveal their abilities. Of course, the three famous overseas immortals are a different story, as they have already risen to fame." The Saintess frowned, knowing that she wouldn't be able to track him down, and could only leave the name of Li Fei in the back of her mind. And Li left the market in a blur, and appeared in a nearby street bustling with mortals. As he walked, he faintly smiled and spoke through voice transmission. "Senior, you have me in admiration. I didn't think that you could use spiritual sense to deceive so many nascent soul cultivators. Even I couldn't sense the slightest oddity about your miraculous transformation." Monarch Soul Divergence indifferently replied, "It wasn't much. After you finish cultivating the last 3 layers of the Great Development Technique, you could have other cultivators dance in your palm. If I were even more skilled in illusion techniques, killing low-grade enemies without touching them would prove an easy task." With much newfound respect, Han Li sighed. "Of course, the first 4 layers are already so fearsome. If I managed to cultivate the technique to completion, my spiritual sense would reach unimaginable heights. It is a pity that I don't have the time to refine the last 4 layers of the technique, even though Senior has given them to me." Monarch Soul Divergence chuckled. "Although your spiritual roots are poor, you have a high aptitude for cultivating my technique. With the addition of other soul-nurturing arts and fantastic items to aid you, your understanding of the great development technique may exceed even mine during my prime. I hope that will be the case. However, there is something that puzzles me. Why did Senior have me take the Saintess ornament? Monarch's soul divergent snorted and asked, "Do you think the endless sky Saintess will easily allow you to run free now that she's come to the Great Jinn?" And Li sighed with helplessness and said, "She'll most likely scour the Great Jinn to find me since I took away the Soaring Tribe's holy beast incarnation and seized that strange cauldron as well. It also seems she has joined together with the Yin-sifting sect, and they'll likely prove to be quite a problem later on." Monarch's soul divergent slowly said, "For that reason I had you take something from her body. In the past, I had learned the refinement technique for a detection pearl. By using their scent, you'll be able to detect their presence from 50 kilometers away. In the future, you'll be able to detect her and will be able to sense her approximate location. This way, you'll be prepared for any of her attacks. However, in about a year, it will completely lose effect as the item fades with time. That should be more than enough for you to avoid her while you stay in the Jinn capital." "So it was like that. Thank you for your consideration, Senior," Han Li hastily replied with joy. "I wasn't thinking about you," Monarch's soul divergence indifferently said. "I just wanted to make sure nothing happened to you before you helped me refine my puppet body." Han Li faintly smiled and said nothing else. He made a sudden change of direction and walked into a nearby alley, making a few turns before arriving in a secluded and abandoned courtyard. There he came to a sudden stop and his expression turned sullen. He then slowly turned around and glared at an area that appeared to be empty. A cold glint shined from his eyes. "Why have you been following me?" "Fellow Taoist Li is worthy of his cultivation. You were able to see through the ghost shadow technique that I've strenuously trained. There is no need for you to worry. I have no hostile intentions." A chuckle sounded out, and in a flash of green light, a silhouette made an appearance. And Li examined this person with narrowed eyes. This eccentric was a shriveled old man with a crafty appearance and an early nascent soul cultivation. His sly face betrayed his thoughts. A hostile expression appeared on Han Li's face and he solemnly said, "You still haven't answered my question. Don't you know it is offensive to follow a fellow cultivators? I could kill you here, and no one would find out." The small old man chuckled and calmly said, "I've only come to find fellow Taoist Li with the sincere thoughts of an exchange. There is no need for you to be so fearsome. Rest assured, you will certainly benefit from it. I have no interest in shadowy characters like yourself. It'd be best for you to leave." Much to the small old man's surprise, Han Li rejected him before he could continue. But soon, he thought of something, and the wrinkles on his face relaxed. With a faint smile, he said, "Fellow Taoist, there is no need to make a decision so quickly. It'd be best to listen to what I have to say first, or you might suffer misfortune." "Misfortune? Now I'm interested. Go on, enlighten me." Han Li held his hands behind his back and wore a pensive expression. "Fellow Taoist is quite wise. First, I'll have you take a look at something and we can save the rest of the discussion for later." The old man chuckled and slapped a pouch at his waist, releasing a streak of green light. It circled once around in the air before landing on the old man's head to reveal a fist-sized spirit beast. It appeared to be a giant slug, but with a body that was emerald green and had long, translucent antennae slowly moving around it. "A slug beast," Han Li said with a sullen expression. "Why did you bring it out? Could it be you wished to shoot me with its venom?" "This low-grade spirit beast couldn't possibly pose a threat to you, fellow Taoist Li, but it does have a minor mutation that has the capability of breaking through a few illusion techniques. During the time fellow Taoist Li stood in confrontation against the cultivators of the Yin-sifting sect, I had a thread of spiritual sense attached to the beast. You should understand what I'm implying." The old man then stroked the slug on his head with a satisfied expression. "What does fellow Taoist plan on doing with that knowledge?" Han Li felt his heart tremble when he heard the capabilities of the slug, but his expression remained entirely calm. The old man chuckled with a face full of greed. "There is no need for fellow Taoists to be so cold. I didn't mean anything by it, well, so long as you agree to present a few treasures or a large sum of spirit stones, of course. Then I will forget all about what I just saw, and I'll be sure to leave you alone." Rather than show anger, Han Li wore a light smile and asked, "You're blackmailing me?" The old man took 2 steps back and wore a sinister smile. "What, you're thinking about killing me? You'd best forget it. I have no fear of your threats as I naturally set up something to protect myself. I already had a disciple of mine following after the Yin-sifting sect and that endless sky saintess. Once something happens to me, he will immediately tell them of the bamboo tube's illusion. I'm sure it will become quite troublesome for you. And don't forget that many high-grade cultivators have come to the Jin capital to participate in the grand auction as well. Do you feel that it is wise to kill me in the city? So long as I let out a whistle, you will be left helpless. While 4 or 5 nascent soul cultivators might not be enough to kill you, how about 7 or 8? To my knowledge, there are quite a few yin-sifting sect elders in the Jin capital. Do you have the confidence of fleeing so many? It is a wise decision to take the loss and avoid calamity. You have no choice. Then with that said, a wooden shield flew out from his sleeve and transformed into a yellow light barrier that surrounded him. And Li tightly frowned while he stared at the barrier, his expression wavering as he pondered. After a long while, his expression returned to normal and he calmly said, "It seems I'll have to make a few concessions or it will be somewhat troublesome. Could you tell me what you want?" The old man rejoiced upon hearing him and hastily said, "Good, I'm not particularly picky. I'm only looking for wealth and have no intention of fighting. So long as fellow Taoist gives me a few ancient treasures, I will be satisfied." The old man's greed had caused Han Li to unconsciously raise his brow and grabbed his storage pouch with a solemn expression. Then, with a flip of his hand, an egg-sized gold and silver ball of light appeared. "You want several ancient treasures. You have quite an appetite. While I don't have other ancient treasures, I did encounter this Cloudnight Pearl in the past. Because it isn't suitable for my uses, I will give it to you. Don't be too greedy, or it will surely consume you." Han Li spoke with an unhappy tone and then sent the sphere over with a shake of his wrist. The old man wore a happy expression, but his eyes flickered. Rather than reaching out to catch the treasure, he tossed the slug to the side, and with a wave of his sleeve, he wrapped the gold and silver ball in black light. He used the slug to further verify that the sphere wasn't an illusion and that it didn't have the aura of an owner. He then suspiciously stared at it for a long while before grabbing it. As he carefully examined it, he muttered, "This item's decorative design is quite unique and is much different from ordinary treasures. Could you tell me its effects? It'd be best if you were to personally give it a try. I can guarantee it will certainly satisfy you. Right? But don't think that a single ancient treasure will be enough to send me away." As the old man excitedly poured magic power into the sphere, thoughts of further blackmail filled his mind. Han Li's lips curled into a faint smirk. "Yes, it isn't enough." Han Li's voice suddenly turned void of emotion. "So how about I send you off to the afterlife?" The old man was alarmed but was too late to react. All of his magic power was being violently absorbed by the gold and silver ball. With a light bang, the ball suddenly ruptured into several tens of Han Li's few remaining black-tainted gold-devouring beetles. As soon as they appeared, they fiercely darted towards his face. There was no dodging at such a short distance. Dread simply flashed through his mind as the beetles covered his head and began to gnaw. If it weren't for the dense light protecting his body and his massive cultivation, the beetles would have torn him apart. With so many fierce insects tearing at his face, he was temporarily blinded and began to furiously claw at them with hands glowing with black light. At that same time, he took a breath of air in an attempt to whistle and attract the attention of other cultivators. But then he heard a snort that caused his blood to run cold. He felt his spiritual sense tear apart in pain as his body convulsed, and he let out an agonizing scream. In his shock, he instantly took to the air and felt the sharp pain afflicting his spiritual sense disappear. Then, the beetles covering his face flew off of him, allowing him to see once more, only to reveal a meter-long golden sword wrapped in purple flames cleaving towards him. "Ah!" a scream sounded out. It was too late for the old man to do much except pour the entirety of his spiritual power into the light barrier in front of him and pray. In furious alarm, he now realized that this overseas vagrant cultivator had planned on killing him from the start, with not the slightest intention of subjecting himself to blackmail. The old man only felt regret for provoking this person. Fortunately, his yellow wood shield was a powerful ancient treasure. It shouldn't have a problem blocking even a mid-nascent soul cultivator. Just as the old man thought this, the golden sword sliced through the golden barrier like soft tofu. The sword continued to fall and released a blinding flash of light as it cleaved the old man's body into two, revealing an inch-large black nascent soul from the resulting gap. It was shocked still in terror, and was then sealed in a chunk of purple ice. The weapon circled once in the air after the strike, and smoothly cleaved through the slug at the side, showering the air with its blood before taking back to the air. Then, several bolts of dense golden lightning leapt from the sword and wrapped around the nascent soul, before thoroughly destroying it in a series of rolling thunderous booms. Hanli appeared relaxed, but he wasn't done yet. He reached his hand out to the old man's body, and a storage pouch flew into his hand. At that same moment, 3 fist-sized scarlet fireballs flew out from his other hand, turning the old man's 2 halves and the slug beast into ash. Hanli then calmly soared into the sky and disappeared without a trace. A quarter hour later, 5 streaks of various colored light flew through the sky and dropped down at the scene. They were Ji Tianhao, the other 2 sifting Yin sect elders, the endless sky saintess, and an unfamiliar youth at core formation stage. Here, this was where Master's aura had disappeared. The youth looked at the magic tool in his hand with an uneasy expression. Ji Tianhao swept his eyes nearby and spotted a few dark red splatters. With a gloomy expression, he said, "There are still remnant spiritual chi fluctuations and traces of blood here. The aura of that cultivator Li is still present as well. It appears your master has already died." The youth paled and said with an uncertain tone, "That's impossible. Although my master's cultivation is inferior to that villain, he should have had a chance to escape." Ji Tianhao coldly snorted in annoyance and said, "What do you know? Let alone early nascent soul cultivators, that scoundrel has already killed cultivators of a similar grade. It is no surprise that your master wasn't able to protect himself. However, you had best explain in detail what old man Zio had told you." At that moment, the endless sky saintess quickly swept her spiritual sense through the area and blurred 20 meters away. She took an item on the ground, carefully examining it before wearing an unsightly expression. "Master didn't say anything," the youth muttered. "He only gave me a magic tool and told me to come find you if something strange happened to it or if he didn't return in time." The saintess waved her hand and tossed an item to the youth. "There is no doubt that your master has met mishap. Isn't this part of an ancient treasure your master used?" The youth hastily reached out and his heart dropped at the sight of it. It was a small piece of yellow wood, and it faintly shined with a familiar light. It was a fragment of the old man's shield. "This is my master's wooden shield. It possessed astonishing defensive power and durability, so how could it possibly be destroyed?" The youth's complexion had become completely bloodless. "Fellow Taoist Lin, it seems the old man is dead. I originally heard you mention that you weren't convinced that this person truly had the ability to kill opponents of equivalent cultivation, but it appears he is more vicious than we originally believed. Although the old man had early nascent soul cultivation and was skilled in many exceptional evasion techniques, he was killed before he even had the chance to call for help. It appears he already possesses the capabilities of a late nascent soul cultivator. We don't have the strength to capture him." The saintess frowned and asked, "What? Brother G, don't tell me you've given up on taking back your sect's signature treasure. Since the ghost-sifting banner is in his hands, he is most likely the culprit who killed your sect's 4th elder." Ji Tianhao dryly laughed. "Even if he was a late nascent soul cultivator, our sect would still pursue him for killing one of our sect elders and seizing our sect's signature treasure. However, your people seem to have a deep hatred for this person as well. Why else would the endless sky saintess stay away from her people for so many years?" The saintess pursed her lips before wearing a sweet smile. "So long as this person is killed, I'll increase the reward by 1/5 of what was agreed. However, our sacred temple requires one of the treasures in his possession. Make it 3/10. The sect will lose a vast number of men in the hunt for this formidable cultivator. As for that treasure, we've already agreed to it previously and don't intend to go back on our word." The saintess hesitated and then said, "Our temple will agree to those conditions." "Very good. With your status as the saintess of the soaring tribes, you surely will keep your promise." Ji Tianhao turned to the Yin-sifting sect elder at his side and said, "Junior Marshal Brother Hu, send out a voice transmission talisman to gather all of the sect elders and disciples near the Jin capital. We must find this person with all our strength. Since he's appeared in the market, he will definitely be participating in the grand auction, and that will be a prime opportunity to capture him. However, our actions must avoid attention from the other sects, and our low-grade disciples mustn't attack him without the support of several sect elders. In truth, it would be safest to draw him into a spell formation and attack him there." The Yin-sifting sect's elder Hu asked, "Should I report this to Sect Master Fang? After all, he was the one who sent the 4th elder to take care of him in the past." With the plan to restore our ghost-sifting banners left half completed and the loss of the 4th elder, the Grand Elders have become dissatisfied with Sect Master Fang, and I heard he is currently refining a vicious treasure in seclusion. Even if he were to immediately come, he wouldn't be able to make it into the grand auction in time. We can later send him a sound transmission talisman, though. That way, if we fail, we can make another attempt with the aid of his forces." With a trace of hesitation, Ji Tianhao eventually agreed. Having settled the matter, they immediately departed. Of course, they had disturbed many mortals with their appearance before they vanished from sight. Although the Jin capital had rules that restricted cultivators from flying, cultivators from sects as large as the Yin-sifting sect didn't take them to heart. Meanwhile, Han Li was walking down a small road over 10 kilometers away. He was looking through the old man's storage pouch with his spiritual sense and found a large assortment of items. Then he came to a sudden stop, as a trace of astonishment appeared on his face. Monarch's soul divergence lazily asked, "What? Have you discovered something?" "What is this? I've never seen it before." With a flip of his hand, Han Li took out a slender jade bottle that was 7 inches tall and had an exquisite appearance. He stroked the bottle to find a stinging icy sensation, causing him to reveal a trace of surprise. Then, he shook the small bottle and heard the faint sounds of splashing liquid. Han Li raised his brow and muttered, "Could it be some sort of spirit liquid? But the bottle itself is quite strange. I actually can't see into it with my spiritual sense." Monarch's soul divergence warned, "If you want to know what it is, you'd best wait until you return. You're walking in a mortal's road. It could attract attention if something strange happened when you open it." Obviously, with a shake of his hand, the small bottle disappeared from sight. Monarch's soul divergence added, "Youngster Han, since you've revealed your identity, you'll have to be more careful in the Jin capital. The Yin-sifting sect and the Endless Sky Saintess won't leave you be. They've probably already guessed that you'll be participating in the grand auction." "It is no matter," Han Li replied. "I don't believe there will be another spiritual beast in the Jin capital that will be able to see through illusions. So long as I avoid the late nascent soul cultivators, nothing should happen. And the grand auction is the sole place that we'll be able to gather the materials we need in time. Even if it's dangerous, we'll have to take the risk." Monarch's soul divergence indifferently said, "That will be fine. But since you've come here to find materials for my puppet body, I will make an exception and use the Great Development Technique's Soulfright Thorn technique to assist you in combat when it becomes too dangerous." "Many thanks, Senior. Your words have put many of my worries at ease," Han Li replied with a happy heart. 2 hours later, Han Li slowly walked back to the Taoist monastery he last stayed at. He chatted with a monastery's master for a moment before calmly returning to his room. Soon after, the room was surrounded by several temporary spell formations, and Han Li proceeded to thoroughly examine the slender dark green bottle. As he nimbly opened it, a cloud of glacial light shot out, causing the temperature in the room to violently drop. Even Han Li, who cultivated the purple apex flames, felt his body shiver in contact with the cold light. In his alarm, he hastily covered his body in a layer of purple flames, and the mist was immediately repelled when it touched the flames, spreading across the room and covering it in a thick layer of ice. Were if not for the restrictions he placed on the room, he feared the icy chi would have left the room. Although this glacial light wasn't nearly as fearsome as the purple apex flames, its coldness was about the same as the celestial ice flames. "What in the world is this?" With purple flames covering his hand, he shook the small bottle with an interested look and gazed at the glacial light that shined out from it. He saw the light dissipate in midair and covered the room in more frost. He eventually brought the bottle in front of his eye as blue light flickered from it. Past the sparkling white mist, he could see a silver liquid that shined with blinding light. Monarch's soul divergence's voice suddenly spoke with excitement. "This is. Carefully pour a drop of the liquid onto a jade disc and let me look at it." Han Li's heart stirred and he wordlessly took out a palm-sized jade disc from his storage pouch. Then, with a slight tremble from the small bottle in his other hand, a drop of silver liquid dropped onto the jade disc and released a clear ring upon landing. Unexpectedly, it had turned into a silver pearl after landing and continued to roll around in the plate. To Han Li's surprise, the silver pearl didn't release the slightest glacial energy and appeared rather ordinary. Monarch's soul divergence took a deep breath and said, "As I thought, only a bottle of myriad-year ice jade could nurture glacial quintessence. I've never heard of myriad-year ice jade before, nor glacial quintessence. They seem quite rare." Monarch's soul divergence calmly replied, "Glacial quintessence is a type of jade essence that is commonly used in tool and pill refinement. However, finding one being nurtured in myriad-year glacial jade is something that is rarely seen in this world. If I remember correctly, The North Night Palace in the Great Jin's northwest should have a small bottle that they keep as a legacy treasure. I've never heard of this item existing in another place in this world. Ah yes, that snow crystal pearl of yours is something that was refined from the myriad-year glacial jade as well. As Hanli gazed at the jade pearl, his eyes wavered. Since this item is so rare, it should have some special properties. Monarch's Soul Divergence replied, special. It's more than just that. To cultivators, this is a top-grade supplementary tool and pill refinement material, but to the demon clan, they would risk their very souls to acquire it. It is a fantastical item capable of protecting them against ascension tribulation. The demon clan's ascension tribulation. Despite Hanli's high expectations, he was still stunned. That's right. There are an innumerable number of high-grade demon beasts in this world, but there are only a sparse few that are able to survive their ascension tribulation, allowing them to take human form. As lightning is a weakness to the majority of demon beasts, the lightning from ascension tribulation results in a near-death sentence. But if evolving demon beasts were to first take a drop of glacial quintessence, their bodies will become greatly resistant against lightning for a time, allowing them to better resist the tribulation. Now do you understand how precious glacial quintessence is to those demon beasts? However, there aren't too many human cultivators that know of this item. The North Night Palace is an exception due to the peculiar ice attribute cultivation art they practice. When I toured the Great Jin in the past, I only acquired knowledge of this item after fighting against many high-grade cultivators from their sect. And it was said every 1,000 years or so, a few high-grade demon beasts within the borders of the Great Jin would secretly gather at North Night Palace's island and launch an all-out attack on it, forcing the sect to hand over some glacial quintessence. Is that true? Hanli asked with disbelief. Monarch's Soul Divergence answered, what's so strange? Demon beasts without glacial quintessence are almost certain to die in their ascension tribulation. If they manage to acquire a drop of glacial quintessence, their odds of surviving is greatly increased, so they would spare no effort to acquire it. And every so often, the old monster of Myriad Demon Valley would take the initiative to organize a raid. So even if they were to fail, they wouldn't suffer heavy losses. However, the island the North Night Sect is based on possesses cultivators with vast ancient abilities and several great formations that have been passed down since antiquity, not to mention the heavenly yin essence vein the island is based on. The freezing glacial chi surrounding the island from a 1,000-kilometer radius is beyond deadly. Demon beasts that didn't cultivate ice attribute cultivation arts would have to use a majority of their body's spiritual power to block the glacial chi when they invade, exhausting their strength in their coming fight against the North Night Palace cultivators. This was the reason why the Demon Clan cultivators haven't been able to capture the island despite the vast strength they possess. However, how did that old man acquire something that is so precious? Are there any peculiar marks on the bottle? Hanli's expression stirred and he touched the bottom of the bottle. Marks. The bottle has a snowflake pattern on its bottom. Do you know it? Then I am right. That is the mark of the North Night Palace. It is quite strange why a bottle of glacial quintessence would find itself in the strange pouch of an early nascent soul cultivator. Monarch's Soul Divergence seemed quite baffled by the matter. And Li pondered for a moment and frowned. There are countless strange things that occur in this world. Perhaps he stole it from North Night Palace or was defector of their sect. Whatever happened, it still fell into his hand. As you said, glacial quintessence is only a supplementary material for tool and pill refinement to humans. In that case, North Night Palace might have just directly handed it over after successive generations of beast attacks. A few knowledgeable cultivators in the Great Jin have asked this before, but the North Night Palace answered that they were more interested in preserving the stability of the Great Jin cultivation world by preventing more Grade 8 demon beasts from existing. After all, a small bottle of glacial quintessence is enough to create several tens of Grade 8 demon beasts and shatter the balance of power in the Great Jin cultivation world, leading to war. However, this is only something that they say to fool ordinary people. In the past, I fought against a party of high-ranking North Night Palace cultivators with the Deputy Palace Master among them. Because of his disrespectful words, I used a soul-searching technique to properly entertain his primal soul after I killed him in battle, but I unintentionally discovered a secret related to the glacial quintessence as a result. With that said, Monarch's Soul Divergence paused as if something came to mind. A secret? Hanli raised his brow with great curiosity. That's right, Monarch's Soul Divergence replied with a grave tone. I would have forgotten about it had I not seen this glacial quintessence. Apart from a few members of North Night Palace's higher echelon, nobody else knows of it. In truth, The main use for the glacial quintessence is that it is the main material to refine a secret ancient medicine, the returning sun water. Hanli felt his breath turn cold from the shock. The returning sun water, the limitless body restoration medicine. Monarch's soul divergence calmly replied, yes, it is said that no matter how severe one's wounds are, even if their body was split into pieces, the medicine could instantly restore them when applied. One record even said that it had the heaven-defying effort of bringing the dead back to life. Of course, those are only rumors. Who knows if it is actually true, but there is one thing that all the records agree on. The returning sun water has a miraculous effect of prolonging one's lifespan by even an entire fourth of their original lifespan. Do you know what this means? Hanli took a deep breath and muttered. This would mean a few late core formation cultivators would have the opportunity to enter nascent soul stage, and even late nascent soul stage cultivators could possibly enter deity transformation stage. Exactly, but the glacial quintessence is only one of the main ingredients for the returning sun water. If you truly wish to refine it, you will need to find pure sun flame essence in the deepest depths of lava. It is incredibly rare and is required to temper the glacial quintessence into returning sun water. Pure sun flame essence, how can you find that? Don't say that common cultivators are able to find it. Pure sun flame essence rarely ever take form in the depths of lava, and by the time it takes shape, it becomes intelligent as well and disappear. How could it allow itself to be captured? Even so, if I were to capture it, it would still be of no use since I don't have the formula for the returning sun water, Hanli said with a wry smile. Monarch's soul divergence sank into silence for a long while and then slowly said, I have no way to acquire the pure sun flame essence, but I do have the formula for it. Don't forget that I searched through the soul of their deputy palace master. After I found the formula, I took note of it because it was rare. If you wish to refine the medicine, I can give it to you. That is great. Perhaps in the future I'll have a use for it. Hanli was pleasantly surprised by Monarch's soul divergence's words. With the returning sun water, his chances of ascending to deity transformation stage were greatly increased. Pure sun flame essence isn't something that can be acquired by the cultivators of this world, so I must warn you to not be too hopeful in acquiring it. If it were easy, the North Night Palace cultivators would have been able to refine it, given the many years they've possessed the formula and glacial quintessence. With that said, Monarch's soul divergence released a yellow jade slip from the bamboo tube, a copy of the formula of the returning sun water. Many thanks, Senior. I'll keep that in mind. Hanli took the jade slip and spoke with a smile. There's also one thing you shouldn't forget. Since your snow crystal pearl was refined from myriad year ice jade, the intensity of its ice attribute and its power should increase if you add in a few drops of glacial quintessence to it. After this, Monarch's soul divergence became silent as if he were finished for the day. Hanli raised his brow when he heard this. He would have done so even if Monarch's soul divergence hadn't mentioned it. But now there was something Hanli was curious about. Given the fearsome icy chi of the glacial quintessence, could the purple apex flames absorb them? Would it increase their strength by another level? With that thought, Hanli turned his eyes back on the silver pearl on the jade plate. He opened his hand and summoned a ball of roiling purple flames. Suddenly, the ball of flames turned into an exquisite barrier and covered the mouth of the bottle. He then formed an incantation gesture with his other hand and began to softly mutter. In a flash of purple light, threads of flame emerged from the barrier and began to slowly revolve around the bottle, gradually speeding up, making the bottle release a wisp of sparkling silver glacial chi. It appeared as gorgeous as starlight. Hanli took a shallow breath and released an azure spell seal from his hand. The barrier of light absorbed the spell seal, and it turned back into a fist-sized ball of flames, completely sealing the glacial chi within the flames. Soon after, Hanli sealed the bottle of glacial quintessence with its cap, and he waved his hand at the ball of purple flames, shooting down Hanli's mouth in a flicker of light. With the fireball and the silver glacial chi inside him, he sat down cross-legged and slowly closed his eyes. At that moment, 2-inch large nascent soul opened its eyes in Hanli's dantian. The purple flames in front of it began to slowly revolve around the flickering silver ball. The nascent soul blinked and formed an incantation gesture, causing its body to brightly glow with azure light. Then, spell seals began to fly out from its hand. The purple fireball excitedly crackled with flames, as the glacial quintessence began to burn in an ember of silver flames, and began to fuse with the purple flames. As for Hanli's physical body, it had now completely sank into deep meditation. Although the master of the Taoist monastery was a mortal, he knew a few things of the cultivation world and could faintly guess Han Li's identity. As such, he hadn't disturbed him when he stayed in his room for an entire day. When Han Li finally opened his eyes, he wore a trace of disappointment. With a helpless tone, he muttered, "The glacial quintessence is incapable of being merged with the purple apex flames. It appears that it can only be used as a material for refinement or enhancement." Then, he spat out a clear, luminous pearl into the air, the snow crystal pearl, and had it float a meter above him. As he watched it, he waved his hand and took out the small bottle of glacial quintessence. He brushed his finger past the bottle and sent it into the air. Then, with his other hand, he slapped the bottom of the bottle, and a drop of glacial quintessence shot out before disappearing into the snow crystal pearl. Forming an incantation gesture, he spat out a thread of azure nascent flame, and it quickly wrapped around the pearl. After watching the flickering inferno for a time, Han Li closed his eyes. The snow crystal pearl's refinement should finish by the time the grand auction convened. With that in mind, he controlled the thread of nascent flame and slowly refined the pearl. Elsewhere, there was a frail azure-robed youth that was strolling around a magnificent garden with a pleased expression. He was currently inside of a grand mansion in the imperial palace to the north of the Jin capital. At that moment, his expression stirred and he suddenly turned around, revealing a face almost exactly like Han Li's. The only difference was that his eyes were particularly cold and emotionless. Footsteps came from the entrance of the garden to reveal an old man wearing a black hat and embroidered robes. When he met the youth's bitter eyes, he couldn't help but tremble. The youth withdrew his gaze and strolled over. He then calmly said, "So it was fellow Taoist Xianxia. Why have you come to find me?" Xianxia let out a dry laugh and walked over. "Elder Han, we've recently acquired some information from our people that may be of interest to you." "Information?" Elder Han coldly uttered. "I have little interest of things outside from myself, nor am I responsible for any specific matters. I will not take action towards anything without Elder Yi's command." He then turned his head over back to look at the garden. Xianxia chuckled, not seeming to mind Elder Han's cold attitude, and said, "I wouldn't dare to disturb your cultivation if it was something else, but this information is closely related to you. Could it be you found that person?" The youth narrowed his eyes and his expression turned frigid. "That's right. It is reported that a few cultivators in the Yin-sifting sect are secretly looking for him through the markets in the Jin capital. This is a portrait of his face and appears the same as what Elder Han had described. How about you take a look for yourself?" A white jade slip then shot out from the old man's sleeve. Elder Han gloomily raised his hand and caught the jade slip. The youth's face twitched as he quickly read through it with his spiritual sense. Then he coldly asked, "That's right, it should be him. Do you know why the Yin-sifting sect is looking for him?" Yet but their elders in the capital have suddenly begun to gather together. "Elder Han, you've said that this person who shares your name is a great enemy. As such, the second elder has made the decision to let you handle him. So long as you don't disturb the grand auction, you may use any method to deal with him. There are a few items being sold that the Yi clan must acquire at all costs, and we can't have you causing a disturbance. Elder Yi also doesn't wish for anything mishap to occur." Elder Han coldly snorted. "So long as this information is accurate, I'll have him disappear from this world. Do you know how long it will take until the clan can help me find those devilish artifacts? Before I enter the Imperial clan and follow your orders, my conditions will have to be fulfilled." "Don't worry, Elder Han. We've already found the whereabouts of several of them. We did help you find one, but the others will be more difficult and will take some time," the old man calmly explained. Elder Han curled his lips and a cold light flickered from his eyes. "I don't care how you do it. I agreed to serve the Yi clan for 20 years, so you must help me find them. Of course, we won't go back on our word. We already have someone looking into more concrete information, and you will be the first to know when we get it." The old man saluted him and then took his leave. After Elder Han watched the old man's silhouette disappear from the flower garden, he coldly laughed as something came to mind. With a wave of his sleeve, a sword with golden flickering light appeared in his hand. The small sword had threads of black chi swirling around it, and it trembled as if attempting to shake off the substance, but no matter how hard it tried, the black chi firmly held. Elder Han frowned and he suddenly spat out a mouthful of black blood to cover the golden sword. It let out a wail and its spiritual light immediately dimmed, but it continued to endure as it cried out. "This is truly troublesome," he muttered with impatience. How is it so difficult to erase the spiritual nature of a sword from the mortal realm? If it wasn't refined from golden lightning bamboo, there would no need to go through such efforts. But since he's already in the Jin capital, this is a seldom opportunity. Not only can I take revenge on him for destroying my main soul and denying my full cultivation, but the flying swords will immediately become masterless, and I'll be able to take control of them after his death. A trace of hostility was betrayed from his face, and his pupils became pitch black, shining with purple light. His entire body began to show monstrous transformations. In a building at the remote corner of a mansion, there were two men and a woman sitting at a table and having a chat. One of them was the old man with a black hat that had just returned from speaking with Elder Han. The other man was middle-aged, possessed a dignified appearance, and wore a jade belt around his waist. As for the beautiful woman, she was the one who had spoken to the head nun at Royal Serenity Monastery. But this time, her expression was sullen as she listened to the old man's account of his conversation with Elder Han. The middle-aged man appeared pensive after hearing him and said, "You mean to say that Elder Han immediately agreed?" "That's right. As soon as he heard that this person had appeared, a trace of killing intent was betrayed from his face. It appears his hatred for him is genuine." The beautiful woman raised her brow and said, "But not only are their names the same, but their appearances are as well. Furthermore, this Han Li had infiltrated the Royal Serenity Monastery not long ago. It was unsure what his objective was. He possibly meant to harm our clan. And now there are yin-sifting sect members secretly tracking him down. I can't help but feel that something is wrong. While there are certainly matters that we don't understand, we don't need to delve too deeply into it. So long as this Elder Han isn't a spy for any of the major factions and will help our clan, that is all that matters. Not only does he possess great cultivation, but his knowledge of ancient secrets has proven to be essential to our cause over the last few years. We must win him over with all our might. As for the man who shares Elder Han's name, we must pay particular attention to him. Since he was able to provoke the yin-sifting sect to such a degree, he can't be an ordinary character. And since we suspect him to be hostile towards our Yi clan, we should assist Elder Han in disposing of him if the opportunity arises." The old man then said, "The second elder's words are reasonable. However, this Elder Han is from an evil sect, and I feel that he is concealing his true power from us. We don't know what he is thinking for us to gather these self-harming devilish artifacts for him. We must be more cautious." With a grave expression, the middle-aged man said, "Little brother Yunyi, don't worry too much about him. Apart from the core elders of our Yi clan, we cannot afford to trust any outsiders and have them reveal our true plans. The upcoming grand auction is particularly crucial. The auction will have several items that we require, but we can't have the other powers discover we are bidding on them. Otherwise, they may see through our plans. Since this cannot happen, you must make proper arrangements to acquire them. There can be no mistakes. If we cannot refine those magic tools, our journey to acquire the treasures in several years will prove very difficult. Second uncle, don't worry. Our preparations for the auction are flawless. We've hired unremarkable vagrant cultivators to purchase the items we require. On the surface, they are unrelated to our Yi clan, and after the auction is over, they will all be killed and silenced." With some hesitation, the beautiful woman asked, "But how are you dealing with matters on the Emperor's side? The High Zenith Sect's Sable and the Heavenly Devil Sect's Seven Wonders were sent to the palace. Could it be due to the rumors?" When the old man heard this, he wore an anxious expression. The middle-aged man's cheek twitched, and he answered with a solemn tone, "Rest assured, eldest brother has already probed their reason for coming, the 3 royal monasteries' mountain-crushing seal. Since it is on the verge of completion, the information collected from their many spies and the rumors that we've deliberately leaked had led them to believe that we are refining a treasure. As a result, they are putting pressure on your Yi clan to sell the treasure to them. In fact, this is a good result. With the bait out in the open, they won't take notice of our true scheme. But just in case, all elders that know of the plan are to stay together whenever they go out. If they are not careful, those 2 eccentrics could ambush them and forcefully read through their souls. Taoist Seven Wonders in particular is skilled in all sorts of bewitchment techniques. Even nascent soul-stage cultivators will fall prey to him if they aren't careful." The old man then sadly said, "So it was like that. But aren't we letting go of the mountain-crushing seal too easily despite the efforts we put into refining it?" The middle-aged sneered, "Not at all. If one sect were to visit us, we wouldn't be able to resist the pressure and only give in. But with 2 of them here, there is an opportunity to exploit. Eldest brother had already made a plan. Regardless of who the mountain-crushing seal goes to, it will cost them quite a bit. The old man and the beautiful woman exchanged a glance of confusion and could only tactfully drop the matter. The three then talked for a moment more, before departing on their own ways. Time quickly passed, and it was the day the grand auction convened. During this time, the yin-sifting sect had searched all over the city for Han Li's whereabouts, but they had actually only looked at the other markets, inns, and other places where cultivators had gathered. Since Han Li was wholly focused on refining the snow crystal pearl, he hadn't emerged even once. During the morning, Han Li had changed his appearance to a large tan man, and the bamboo tube on his back transformed into a longsword. With his disguise prepared, he made his way to the West Jin market with his cultivation restrained to mid-core formation stage to avoid attracting much attention. As he had anticipated, the closer he approached the market, the more high-grade cultivators he could detect. While a majority of them were at core formation stage and low-grade cultivators, there were quite a number of nascent soul eccentrics. It appeared that the more wealthy cultivators were unwilling to let the grand auction pass them by. After Han Li passed through the restriction and headed into the market, he discovered that the street was filled with cultivators dressed in a variety of unfamiliar styles. As he swept his gaze past them, he discovered several black-robed individuals at the entrance, including Ji Tianhao. They were currently looking at all those entering the market. Han Li inwardly frowned and calmly walked through the entrance without meeting their gaze. But just as he was walking by, a faint thread of spiritual sense examined him and quickly moved on to look at another core formation cultivator. The yin-sifting sect elders didn't look at every cultivator that entered the market with their spiritual sense, only those that they found unfamiliar or suspected to be vagrant cultivators. While their stealthy prying wouldn't be sensed by core formation cultivators, vagrants at nascent soul stage would be angered, and they would bitterly glare at the yin-sifting sect elders. Fortunately, the yin-sifting sect had no intention of stirring up trouble and didn't continue after they were done with their cursory inspection. Although the vagrant cultivators felt resentful, they weren't about to provoke a sect as large as the yin-sifting sect and simply continued on their way. As if dissatisfied with the fruitless search, the old man with sharp eyes from the yin-sifting sect members said, "Elder Ji, I heard that this person is skilled in appearance transformation techniques. I fear there is no use in guarding the entrance." Ji Tianhao glanced at the old man and calmly said, "Senior Marshal Brother Yin Li, I've only had you do this to stir him into action. This wasn't meant to actually find this person. As his abilities are great, we have no method of seeing through his true identity. However, the aggressive manner of this search might fluster him and cause him to break his appearance. Even if he is completely unfazed and can keep his disguise up, you don't need to worry." As the soaring tribes and the heavenly devil sect have a bit of friendship between them, fellow Taoist Lin has already gone to borrow the clear-sound mirror from fellow Taoist Seven Wonders. Unfortunately, he is occupied in his residence and won't emerge for a few days. As such, our best plan of action would be to continue searching, and even if we can't find him, he might let his guard down. Then, during the last 2 days of the auction, we will have the clear-sound mirror break through his concealment, and will be able to quickly capture him. The sharp-eyed old man's face lit up and he excitedly said, "Given your unrivaled skill in planning, it is impossible that we do something of wasted effort. If it's like that, we won't need to call over the sect master and the grand elders. We'll gain great merit in the sect once we capture him." "I hope so." Ji Tianhao dryly laughed and then glanced in the direction of the treacherous in hall. From how he was being handled, it was clear that they viewed him as a fearsome character. It was only natural considering that he killed their sect's fourth elder who was at the peak of mid-nascent soul stage. It wouldn't be strange for things to go against their expectations, so it was best for them to be careful. With that in mind, Ji Tianhao unconsciously wore a sullen expression. At that moment, Han Li was standing in front of a huge stone building. There was a layer of rainbow light covering it, giving the building a mysterious aura. But what surprised him was that there was now another white stone hall floating above the treacherous hall. It was 1/3 the size of the building below, but it was still colossal and spanned at least a kilometer in area. In front of Han Li stood a yellow-robed attendant with Foundation Establishment Cultivation. He was giving Han Li an explanation with a respectful tone. At that point, Han Li had ceased concealing his nascent soul cultivation. While the auction attendant viewed him with indifference, he didn't dare to be rude. In front of the building, there were several other similarly dressed attendants present. They were all accompanying nascent soul stage cultivators. As for the core formation stage cultivators, They were simply standing in front of a stone tablet that was set up in front of the building gate. They were reading what was carved on it. After a while, Han Li withdrew his gaze from his surroundings and turned his attention back on the attendant, saying, "The participation fee for the nascent soul stage auction will be 1,000 spirit stones, and will take place in the 9 Firmaments Hall. And the core formation grade auction will take place in treacherous Hall with a participation fee of 100 spirit stones. Is that right?" The attendant smiled and said, "It is exactly as Senior says. There are quite a few more cultivators participating in this auction than expected. As such, we had no choice but to borrow the 9 Firmaments Hall from the Hidden Fortune Pavilion in an emergency. Our spirit stone fees are the same as always, though. They are primarily used to avoid having the auctions from being too crowded, or else anyone could enter, allowing over 10 times as many people. However, a senior like yourself shouldn't view such a small sum of spirit stones with much regard. 1,000 spirit stones. Your hall is quite skilled in acquiring riches, but as you said, so long as I am able to grab the items I desire, this amount of spirit stones is of little cost. I have no interest in the core formation grade auction and will only be participating in the nascent soul grade auction." Han Li waved his hand and tossed 10 mid-grade spirit stones towards the yellow-robed attendant. "Please come in, Senior. The nascent soul grade auction will begin in the late morning. This is an auction badge. You can this to enter the later days of the auction." The attendant took the spirit stones with a smile and handed over a jade badge over to Han Li. He accepted the badge, and his body wordlessly flickered with azure light. He then flew towards the large hall in the sky in a streak of light, along with other cultivators. When Han Li arrived at the gate of the 9 Firmaments Hall, he saw that there was no one there apart from a barrier of white light. His brow stirred, and he poured a bit of spiritual power into the jade badge. Suddenly, a beam of red light flew out from the badge and split the barrier. Without another thought, he flew inside in a blur before the gate sealed itself again. 4 hours later, several hundreds of nascent soul stage cultivators had gathered together in the 9 Firmaments Hall. With 3 huge bell strikes, the grand auction convened. Han Li sat in a desolate corner of the hall and indifferently glanced at a middle-aged man wearing black robes standing at the front 300 meters away. He held a faint yellow crystal and gave the item a simple introduction. "Turmeric crystal, found in the vast deserts of West Nanjiao. It is something that can only be found a kilometer deep into the sand. It is an extremely hardy material and outstanding in creating Earth attribute magic treasures, as it contains large amounts of Earth attribute spiritual chi, making it an outstanding material in creating Earth attribute magic treasures. The minimum bid for this item is 8,000 spirit stones. Each increasing bid must be at least 1,000 spirit stones." The man spoke clearly and didn't make any excessive attempt to present the item. Of course, the conductor of the auction possessed nascent soul cultivation, and under Han Li's careful observation, he discovered that he was at the peak of mid-nascent soul stage, possessing the greatest cultivation in the hall. Considering that he had an audience of several hundred similar grade cultivators, the overwhelming pressure of their combined spiritual sense would be enough to stupefy any lower grade cultivator. With him presiding over the auction, none would dare to raise any trouble. As for the turmeric crystal, although it was a good material for refining Earth attribute techniques, only a sparse few were bidding for it. Eventually, it was acquired by a nameless cultivator for 12,000 spirit stones. The following items, they were treated with only slight interest. Han Li watched this as he sat back in his chair with indifference. Since the auction would go on for several days, the items that would be on display for the first day wouldn't be particularly great. Although these materials are rare enough to catch some interest from nascent soul cultivators that truly required them, they were only there to take up time until enough cultivators gathered at the auction. A few good items will be taken out at the end to the audience interested for the next day's auction, and these items would be where the bidding wars would take place. With that thought, Han Li didn't pay much attention and lazily observed many of the other nascent soul cultivators in the hall. Although these were a small portion of the peak cultivators in the Great Jin, they represented the Empire's various powers and factions. But what most attracted his attention were 3 large Buddhist monks with glossy foreheads sitting in the hall. One of the monks was rather lean, while another was somewhat plump, and the third had an amiable appearance and long, white facial hair. The 3 all wore gray Buddhist robes and had lowered heads. Since this was the first time Han Li had seen high-grade cultivators from a Buddhist sect, he looked at them for quite a while. The one sitting at the center was the eldest amongst them and met his gaze. Although it appeared warm and peaceful, Han Li couldn't help but feel his heart tremble at the sight. The old monk appeared quite sharp, not surprising given that Buddhist sects rivaled Taoist and Confucian sects in the Great Jin. As Han Li was unwilling to accidentally arouse any hostility, he immediately withdrew his spiritual sense and maintained a cool appearance. After the old monk took a look at Han Li, he maintained his original calm demeanor and returned his attention elsewhere. In addition to the Buddhist monks, there were a few other cultivators that he found peculiar. He began to match these cultivators with the information he previously acquired about the various powers in the Great Jin to their faces. There could be a later use in recognizing these characters, Han Li thought. Time slowly passed by as each of the items auctioned off. As he expected, the rarer items only began to show near the end, causing the group of disinterested cultivators to stir. The atmosphere in the hall grew fervent as competition for these successive treasures were fierce, with bids reaching astonishing prices. After all, if nascent soul-stage cultivators missed this opportunity to acquire what they needed, they might not have another one. A chunk of ebony gold weighing 2 kilograms, a rare tool refinement material. Starting bid is 30,000 spirit stones. Each bid must increase the price by at least 2,000 spirit stones. The auction conductor gave a simple description of this incredibly rare material and revealed it on a jade plate. It was a pitch-black lump of metal that faintly glowed with golden light. When Han Li heard this, his body grew tense and a glint flickered from his eyes. He needed ebony gold and had been looking for quite a while. He didn't expect to find it so quickly. 36,000, 40,000, 45,000 spirit stones. As ebony gold was rather famous, several high bids were shouted before Han Li could place his own. He could only frown and calmly put out his own bid. Since he was determined to win, he decided to wait until he could compete against the highest bidder. When an unknown cultivator bid the highest price for 60,000 spirit stones, the competition came to a sudden stop. Han Li then pointed to his jade badge. After light flashed from it, he shouted, 65,000. 67,000 spirit stones. While the other person appeared to truly want this item, he was hesitant to continue. 70,000, Han Li shouted. This time the other bidder turned silent. Although ebony gold was rare, he decided to give up on the item at such a high price. When Han Li saw this, he smiled. The auction conductor felt quite satisfied to see the item bidded for such a high price. Just as he thought to ask the crowd twice to make sure that no one would bid higher, a cold voice sounded out, 75,000 spirit stones. Han Li and the auction conductor blanked when they heard this, and the other cultivators were all left shocked. Han Li quickly regained his thoughts and shouted, 80,000. 82, the voice calmly raised the bid. He appeared to require the item just as Han Li did. With this spoken, the participants in the hall couldn't help but look in the old man's direction. However, they saw a cultivator covered in a dim black mist sitting in the back. While his true appearance was hidden, they could see enough to know he was an old man. Han Li was bewildered by the old man's competition, but he didn't have the mind to continue to waste time with him. With a sullen heart, he shouted out his price. 120,000 spirit stones. When this was uttered, all of the other cultivators present were confused. This number of spirit stones could easily purchase a decent ancient treasure, far beyond the ordinary price of ebony gold. An uproar commenced, and many cultivators couldn't help but look at Han Li. However, he had changed his appearance to that of a cultivator with a sallow complexion. It was natural that none could recognize him. Han Li didn't pay any notice to their gazes. Rather, he focused his attention on what the opposition would do next. The old man was clearly astonished when he heard this large price. If he were to spend any more spirit stones, he wasn't certain he would be able to acquire an even more important material coming up and would prove disastrous. From the high price his opponent raised, he clearly wasn't about to let go of the item without a fight. With that in mind, the old man didn't further contend for the item and was finally won by Han Li. However, this bidding match had attracted much attention to the two. Afterwards, nothing else had caught Han Li's eye, and he simply rested in his seat after acquiring the ebony gold. When the old man saw the even rarer material, firepart sand, he contended against a large group of cultivators before eventually acquiring it for over 200,000 spirit stones. Though his spending was quite eye-catching, that isn't to say that the old man had spent the most spirit stones in the auction. At the very end, high-grade ancient treasures, cultivation medicines, and other such rarities had all sold at 300,000 spirit stones and more. However, Spending 200,000 spirit stones of mere refinement materials was rather out of the ordinary. With the first day of the auction concluded, Han Li departed alongside the crowd of cultivators. The group from the yin-sifting sect were no longer at the market entrance as if they've given him. He smiled at the sight of this and calmly returned to the Taoist monastery. As for the mysterious man shrouded in black qi, he slipped away to an unremarkable home in the Jin capital. The old man wearing a black hat from the Yi clan was there waiting for him. He immediately handed over the fire part sent to him without a word. The old man smiled after receiving it and said, "I already know about the ebony gold. Thanks for your efforts, fellow Taoist Gao. I didn't expect that someone else would pay such a high price, or I would have handed over more spirit stones. Fortunately, someone should be selling ebony gold in the underground auction in a few days. I already asked around for what it was being traded for, and I've already prepared it for you. When the time comes, I'll have to trouble you to make another trip." Taoist Gao dryly laughed and replied, "Brother Yun Yi had given me more than enough spirit stones, but I feared I wouldn't be able to acquire fire part sand. It was something that was unexpected. Of course, I will be heading to the underground auction in a few days." With fellow Taoist Gao handling matters, I am reassured. I have prepared a medicine pill for the trade. When the matter is concluded, I will give you several more of them as a reward. Yun Yi nodded with satisfaction and handed over a jade box. "Yes, since you keep your promises, I will strive to do my best." Old man Gao happily examined the pill in the box and nodded as well. Then, he took a storage pouch of spirit stones from the old man as well as a jade slip detailing the items to be bought at the auction on the next day before departing. When Yun Yi saw old man Gao leave the building, his smile disappeared. Yin Yi also had met with two vagrant core formation cultivators after nightfall. They both traded a few materials for rewards and departed happily. In the following days, Han Li arrived at the Nine Firmaments Hall in the morning to participate in the grand auction. Since he was able to find something he wanted on the first day, Han Li was quite hopeful of finding more. It was as old man Fu had said. There were no other items of the rarity Han Li desired, apart from the 10-some items that were auctioned at the end of the day. And of these, a majority of them were completed magic treasures. It seems that the appearance of the ebony gold had only been a lucky occurrence. However, Han Li was not currently attending the grand auction, but was instead looking for information about the underground auction. According to the information he acquired, the first few days in both the underground and the grand auction were more and less the same, apart from a particular emphasis on Devil Dao materials. But when the last day came, there would be a trade fair that was targeted for nascent soul-grade cultivators. In the past, rare items would often make an appearance there. It was quite possible that would be where he would find the materials he was looking for. Not anyone could join, though. Only cultivators related to the Devil Dao or those that were recommended could participate. With that figured out, Han Li turned his attention back to the grand auction. Several days had passed, and the final day of the grand auction had arrived. Another item that he required was presented, much to his excitement, and he managed to win the item for over 100,000 spirit stones. Not long after, the grand auction came to a close. Han Li departed with the rest of the cultivators, but he didn't leave the market. Rather, he made his way to the Hidden Fortune Pavilion. Unbeknownst to him, this had coincidentally allowed him to escape from calamity for the time being. The yin-sifting sect elders that were waiting at the market's entrance several days ago had made a sudden reappearance. This time, with the Soaring Skies Saintess in tow. Currently, the Saintess was fiddling with a small mirror sparkling with silver light as she looked at the cultivators leaving the market entrance. She would occasionally glance at the mirror and frown as her eyes wandered. With time, the silver light flickering from the small mirror grew ever brighter, but the Saintess had remained silent. Ji Tianhao and the others gradually grew more sullen when they saw this, and their expressions eventually became unsightly. Soon she sighed and hesitantly said, "Although I discovered many cultivators that have masked their appearance using various illusion techniques, I haven't caught sight of him. Could it be he didn't take part in the grand auction? If that's the case, the last few days were spent in vain." "Impossible," Ji Tianhao stated. "All the high-grade cultivators that arrived in the Jin capital recently should have taken part in the grand auction. I personally saw him looking at the treacherous hall when we first saw him in the city. His intentions were obvious." The Saintess unconsciously nodded, but the heavy expression on her face had yet to disappear. The sharp-eyed yin-sifting sect elder asked, "Could it be that the Clearstone mirror isn't as miraculous as rumors stated? Or was it because fellow Taoist Lin was unable to fully display its strength due to the short amount of time she's refined it? That's impossible, the saintess shook her head and explained. The Clearstone mirror is one of Taoist seven wonders, seven profound treasures, whose fame had spread throughout the cultivation world. As for the matter of refinement, it is a peculiar ancient treasure that only needs some refinement to fully use. A few days should have already been enough, given that I have been able to see through the true appearances of these other eccentrics. There should only be a sparse few unbreakable illusion techniques that can escape it. Ji Tianhao's gaze flickered and he pondered. So it was like that. Since we weren't able to find him with the Clearstone mirror, he either had some business to remain in the market or he left through some other method. Given the great fame of the Clearstone mirror, there should only be a sparse few unbreakable illusion techniques that can escape it. It is impossible that he cultivated one of them. As for the other possibility, the market is surrounded by the illustrious 8 light peaks formation. It is impossible for him to silently break through it. It is most likely he has remained in the market for other business. The sharp-eyed old man hesitantly asked, "What is fellow Taoist Lin planning?" The saintess proposed, "We will stay on guard. If he is still in the market, he will have to leave through here. We should also send a few clever disciples to stroll around inside and see if they can find traces of him." Ji Tianhao pondered for a moment and found nothing wrong with her suggestion. "Fellow Taoist Lin's words are reasonable. Let's wait until night. He should make an appearance by then if he is there." Afterwards, he raised his hand and released several sound transmission talismans. Soon, a group of low-grade yin-sifting sect disciples arrived and disappeared into the market after they were given their orders. While these cultivators were bewildered from finding no trace of Han Li, the person in question was currently meeting with Elder Wang at the Hidden Fortune Pavilion with his true appearance. Elder Wang knew about Han Li's appointment with Old Man Fu, but he paid it little mind. Rather, he was personally attending to Han Li in the esteemed guest lounge with great enthusiasm. Han Li and Elder Wang chatted for a while, exchanging their cultivation experiences. As they gained something from the conversation, it became more enthusiastic when Old Man Fu had finally arrived at the Hidden Fortune Pavilion. When he saw them, he joined in without the slightest courtesy. Their exchange lasted until sunset. They then looked at each other with a smile as they had all gained much from the talk. Old Man Fu and Han Li bid farewell to Elder Wang and promptly departed. Then after leaving, Han Li's face became vague and instantly transformed into the unfamiliar face of a sallow cultivator. Old Man Fu was somewhat surprised initially, but he didn't seem to mind. Rather, it was Han Li's turn to be surprised. Instead of heading out of the market entrance, Old Man Fu brought Han Li to a nearby building by the name of Spirit Rinse Study. When Han Li saw that they were going to enter, he couldn't help but ask, "Brother Fu, is this it?" The Spirit Rinse Study is a private business. The owner has been good friends with me for many years and had recently put down a teleportation formation inside. It will take us to where the underground auction is being held. I'd already informed them we were coming. If I remember correctly, should there be restrictions preventing teleportation in the market? When Han Li heard this, he was quite surprised. Old Man Fu chuckled and casually explained, "Don't worry, fellow Taoist. My old friend has quite a reputation. He applied for a permit in advance for a temporary exception. This teleportation formation will only exist for a few months and sparse few people know of it." So it was like that. The Spirit Rinse Study's master was an old man with fair skin. His demeanor and attitude was unordinary and gave a refreshing impression to those who spoke to him. And to Han Li's greater surprise, this person was actually a renowned spell formation grandmaster. It was a pity that he didn't have any time to continue talking, as he was in a hurry to take part in the underground trade fair. They headed into a hidden room and took a small teleportation formation. A moment later, the two arrived at an unremarkable hidden cave. When the two left and flew off, Han Li discovered that they were near some mountain at the south of the Jin capital. The huge walls could be faintly seen from a distance. But after Han Li took the teleportation formation, Ji Tianhao took a look at the sky and pondered shortly before he said, "Fellow Taoist Lin, the underground trade fair is about to start. There are many items that will appear and prove to be very useful to my cultivation. It is now dark and the disciples have also found no trace of him in the market. Perhaps we made an error in judging his location. Since this person is quite cunning, it is possible he didn't come. It would be better for fellow Taoists to join in this trade fair since you had missed the auction. While it is possible that person will be there, you'll be certain to gain something." The saintess bit on her lip and glanced in the direction of the market. Then with a reluctant tone she said, "It seems that it will be better to take action than to remain idle. All right, I'll accompany you. Perhaps I will truly have something to gain." Soon after, Ji Tianhao and the others had a short chat before leaving behind the other two nascent soul elders to guard the market entrance. Then, the remaining elders and the saintess joined the trade meet. As for the sharp-eyed old man and one other, they had their own plans and bit their leave. At that moment, the yin-sifting sect elders that had gathered together had split apart before they could encounter Han Li. The large old mid-nascent soul cultivator Han Li met earlier at the Hidden Fortune Pavilion. Han Li traded a scarlet essence mushroom for his Thunderspirit crystal. Not long after the yin-sifting sect members departed, two cultivators appeared from a nearby building in a blur. When the two saw that there was no one left at the entrance, they solemnly spoke to each other through voice transmissions before tailing the yin-sifting sect members out of the market. When they arrived at the market entrance, the two immediately set off in their separate directions. One of them waved a small flag, and their body disappeared into a cloud of purple smoke, chasing after Ji Tianhao's group. The other cultivator streaked through the sky in the direction of the imperial city. Near a nameless mountain close to the Jin capital, Old Man Fu glanced at Han Li with a curious look and said, "Don't you have anything you want to ask?" After the teleportation, Han Li carefully glanced around the transportation formation and had found nothing amiss, much to his relief. He calmly replied, "What's the point? I'm somewhat puzzled as to why Brother Fu used a transportation formation to leave the market, but I'm sure you have your reasons." Han Li's careful actions hadn't gone unnoticed by Old Man Fu, but he wasn't angered in the slightest. Rather, he was quite satisfied by his show of caution. Old Man Fu narrowed his eyes and then wore a mysterious smile. "In truth, my reason wasn't much. I simply acquired information that there were yin-sifting sect cultivators waiting at the entrance of the market. I may have reckoned that fellow Taoist Han wouldn't wish to see them, so I decided to use teleportation to avoid them. I hope you didn't feel I was being too meddlesome." "Fellow Taoist Fu, what do you mean by that?" Han Li's heart trembled, but he managed to keep a calm attitude. Old Man Fu chuckled, still wearing his mysterious smile, and slowly said, "There is no need to worry. If I truly wished to mean you harm, I would have set up an ambush here. When Brother Han stood in front of the treacherous hall, didn't you clash with Ji Tianhao and his sect members?" After a moment of silence, Han Li replied, "I didn't expect that Brother Fu would know this. But why did you help me? I'm not convinced that you would risk offending the yin-sifting sect over our appointment." Old Man Fu calmly stated, "Risk offending the yin-sifting sect. It appears Brother Han is unaware of my background. I'm the enforcement elder for the Nine Serenities sect. We're already at odds with the yin-sifting sect to begin with. I will happily obstruct them if the opportunity arises. Though the main reason I helped you is because I have a request." When Han Li heard that he was an elder of one of the 10 great devil Tao sects, he was alarmed and grew vigilant. "The Nine Serenities sect. It seems I've been disrespectful. I've long heard of the grand reputation of your esteemed order, but why would a sect as powerful as yours need my help?" "This is a private matter, so I cannot ask them for help," Old Man Fu said with a smile. "However, there is no hurry. After the trade fair is done, we can discuss the matter further. There are benefits to be had, but if you dislike the conditions, I won't force you to agree." After some consideration, Han Li smiled and said, "In that case, I'll agree to the favor." Since he had already offended one of the great 10 devil Tao sects, it would be best not to offend another one. As such, he decided to give an empty promise and leave the matter for later. "I see Brother Han is also a straightforward person. Let's go, the trade fair isn't far away." A happy expression appeared on Old Man Fu's face, and then he took off into the distance. With haste, they arrived at a barren mountain range over 1,000 kilometers away from the Jin capital. They circled around one of the countless mountains and dropped down in front of a stone cliff dirtied with earth and moss. It didn't appear the slightest out of the ordinary. Han Li's attention wasn't focused on the cliffside, but rather his surroundings. He discovered that they were in a deep, overgrown valley. If he wasn't led here, he wouldn't have noticed there were cultivators present in the area. It was clear Old Man Fu had been there before. He casually waved his sleeve and a small palm-sized plate flew out. It flickered with white light and sank into the stone without a trace. Soon, the cliff face began to glow with dazzling yellow light and suddenly disappeared to reveal a huge cave that was over 30 meters wide. There were two green-robed, middle-aged cultivators standing at the cave's entrance. They both possessed late core formation cultivation, and one of them was holding onto Old Man Fu's plate. The one holding the disc saluted the two and then spoke with a neutral tone, so it was originally Senior Fu. This other senior appears unfamiliar. May I ask for your esteemed name? Old Man Fu glared at him and bluntly said, "This is fellow Taoist Han, a cultivator from overseas. Since I've already given him a recommendation, what is there to check? Quickly give him an identification so we may join in the trade fair." Since Senior Fu was the one who recommended him, there will be no problems, of course. This is a nascent soul stage identity plate. If Senior violates any of the trade fair rules, we will take it back. This plate will allow you to take part in 4 trade meets, though you will only have to pay for the first one. The rules require you pay 10,000 spirit stones for the plate. The green-robed cultivator courteously gave Old Man Fu back the jade plate and then took out one for Hanley. "Here are the spirit stones." Although Hanley felt a bit of heartache, he readily handed over a storage pouch containing 10,000 spirit stones. After counting the spirit stones in the bag, the green-robed cultivator smiled and handed over a plate that had the number 347 written on it. "Here is the jade plate. Please take care of it." Hanley glanced at it and raised his brow. 347. Are there that many people participating? Of course not, the other green-robed cultivator explained. A portion of these seniors will not be attending the trade fair for various reasons. In my experience, there will only be about 200 people. Oh, that is still quite a few. Hanley nodded with understanding. All right, it is about time that we join the trade fair. If I have the opportunity, I'll give my regards to your master. Old Man Fu then led Hanley deep into the cave. As Hanley followed behind him, he said, "Their cultivation wasn't weak. From your tone, it sounded as if they had the same master." Old Man Fu chuckled and asked, "Do you know of the 4 great vagrant cultivators of the Great Jin?" "Yes, of course. Is their master one of them?" Hanley asked with a curious tone. "That's right. Their master is fellow Taoist musician who possesses the most mysterious abilities of the 4. He has already been in late nascent soul stage for many years now, though his cultivation is nearly immeasurable. In the past, I had the opportunity to personally witness him use his grand abilities to slay a grade 8 demon beast with ease. It is said that he is one of the 2 in the Great Jin who possesses the greatest chance of ascending to deity transformation stage. Since the organizers of the trade fair had selected the 2 of his disciples to act as gatekeepers, I reckon they intend on drawing support from their master's fame. After Old Man Fu gave Hanley the explanation, he let out a deep sigh of admiration. "May I ask who is the other fellow Taoist to have the possibility of entering deity transformation stage?" With a wry smile, Old Man Fu answered, "The other person is the Buddhist cleansing fire sect's monk Jade Moon. In a sparse 400 years, he had already entered late nascent soul stage. He's a prodigy that only appears in the cultivation world once every 10,000 years. While I do consider myself one of the outstanding talents, we aren't close to exceptional when compared to those 2. But Brother Fu's cultivation is quite profound, and I hold you in quite some admiration. Late nascent soul stage appears to be a single breakthrough away for you." "Nonsense. I've remained trapped in my stage of cultivation for 300 years, and have long given up hope of reaching late nascent soul stage. Yet, it appears you've achieved mid-nascent soul stage not long ago. Perhaps you'll reach a breakthrough in the near future." "Brother Fu is quite funny. How could such a thing happen?" Hanley dryly laughed. Of course, he wasn't about to take his words seriously. With Old Man Fu taking the lead, Hanley eventually saw a white light shine in front of him, and a large hall bustling with activity from the opening. He couldn't help but grow excited. In an area over 50 kilometers away, Ji Tianhao wore a fierce expression, and black qi was roiling from his body. He was holding onto the head of an unfamiliar cultivator in a rigid grasp, forcefully extracting the memories of the victim's soul using secret soul-searching techniques. The victim's appearance became warped, his eyes flickered, and his body trembled in a display of gruesome agony. The endless sky saintess and a middle-aged black-robed cultivator were watching at the side. A short moment later, the victim of the soul search suddenly trembled and fell to the ground with a stream of black blood flowing out his nose. Ji Tianhao frowned, and he set the corpse alight in a black inferno, instantly turning it to ash. He then closed his eyes and began to look through the memories he extracted. When Ji Tianhao eventually opened his eyes, the saintess asked, "What was his identity? Why was he stealthily following us?" "He's a cultivator from the Yi clan," Ji Tianhao said. The Yi clan, the Imperial Yi clan, the endless sky saintess said with surprise. Does fellow Taoist Lin know the person who sent them? Ji Tianhao asked with an odd expression. He is a Yi clan elder surnamed Han. This man has the same appearance as the person we're pursuing. It was like that, the saintess asked with surprise. Are those two the same person? What does that person have to do with the Yi clan? Ji Tianhao said with a solemn expression. I'm not sure. The person I soul-searched was only a vagrant cultivator recruited by the Yi clan. Even if they aren't the same person, they are certain to be closely related. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent someone to follow us. If that person is truly an elder of the Yi clan, it will be somewhat troublesome. The saintess smiled and said, Is the imperial clan that large? I recall that the Yi clan was under the control of many large sects, including your own. What is there for you to fear? The Yi clan isn't a common cultivator clan, Ji Tianhao explained with a sigh. Their identity as the top clan in the Great Jin doesn't come from their status as the royal imperial family. It is because they possess 7 nascent soul stage elders, not to mention the large number of vagrant cultivators that they've recruited, and the secret powers they nurtured in secret. Their true strength isn't any lesser than a large cultivator sect. Although the person following us didn't have great cultivation, his flag was exceptionally effective. Were it not for fellow Taoist Lin's clear-sound mirror, it would have been difficult for us to detect him following us. It was nothing. Because of my cultivation art's enhanced senses, I was able to faintly perceive something amiss ever since we left the market. It was only a matter of luck that I used the clear-sound mirror at the right time. The saintess stared at Ji Tianhao and calmly asked, How does Brother Ji plan on handling this matter? Does your sect still plan on fulfilling your agreement with our endless sky temple? Ji Tianhao looked into the distance and chuckled. The Yi clan might be powerful, but my sect has nothing to fear from them. Besides, it involves our sect's signature treasure and the life of our enforcement elder. Even if he was truly a Yi clan elder, our sect can make an exchange for him. Fellow Taoist Lin shouldn't worry about the matter. Now that the time has arrived, let us go to the trade meet. Brother Ji's words have put my worries to rest. The saintess nodded with a satisfied expression. Soon after, the three departed in streaks of light. Unbeknownst to them, not long after they left, a flicker of black light appeared nearby, revealing an azure-robed youth. He sneered as he looked in the direction that the three had flown off in. So the yin-sifting sect and the endless sky temple are working together. That's fine. I'll let you live for the time being, so have that draw out that youth hand. I still haven't forgotten my hatred for the death of my main soul. After muttering that, the youth blurred and disappeared from sight. Han Li was now covered in a mist of green light, and was wryly laughing in his mind. He was stood in a dim hall with about 400 seats arranged in a circle around an empty space. To his surprise, when he was about to enter the trade meet, a masked gatekeeper stuck a unique talisman onto him, and he then passed through a simple teleportation formation. Afterwards, he found himself shrouded in a mist of green light as he stood inside the hall. His appearance was completely hidden. He then quickly looked around him in alarm, and found several tens of cultivators scattered throughout the area that were similarly concealed in mists of various colors. A few of them were standing of their own discretion. Curious, Han Li took a seat at the corner of the hall and began to stealthily release his spiritual sense nearby, wanting to see whether he could see past the mist of light. He was astonished to discover that he wasn't able to forcefully break through it with his powerful spiritual sense. Although he hadn't used all his strength, he reckoned it wouldn't make much of a difference. As these thoughts appeared in his mind, he unconsciously swept his spiritual sense through the hall to discover that it was under the influence of a strange spell formation. Although it didn't appear to possess any formidable restrictions, the spiritual chi it released matched the light that concealed the cultivators present. Skilled both in talismans and spell formations, Han Li pondered for a moment before finding himself in awe. It was clear that the talisman was specially made for synchronized use with the spell formation. With the talisman attached, one only needed to enter the range of the spell formation before the talisman shroud is activated. Then no matter how strong a cultivator's spiritual sense was, they wouldn't be able to overpower the spell formation. Without fear of recognition, these eccentrics may now openly exchange the items they wish without fear of meeting any mishaps, no matter how rare the items may be. Han Li let out a sigh, and his original worries of the yin-sifting sect cultivators participating in the trade meet were alleviated. He then placed his jade plate on the table in front, and he began to rest in his chair. As time slowly passed by, more cultivators gathered in the hall through the teleportation formation. When Han Li opened his eyes once more, There were nearly 200 cultivators in the hall, and a 10-meter-wide white jade table had appeared at the center. He narrowed his eyes and stared at it in silence. Not long after, the jade table flashed with light, and a silhouette covered in white light appeared behind it. As our appointed time had arrived, everyone should have arrived by now. Let us start the trade meet. The white silhouette turned to look at everyone in the room and swept his sleeve to reveal 4 bulging storage pouches onto the table. All the cultivators looked over with clear excitement. The white silhouette slowly said, "This trade meet will be the same as the last. It will primarily focus on rare materials. Ancient treasures and magic tools can take part in this meeting if they are rare enough. As per common practice, you may put up a few materials for spirit stones and can trade for them if your price is high enough. But there is something that will be different about this trade meet. This time, we were entrusted by an important client to sell a grand treasure for him. He will only trade this treasure for a few materials that are rarely seen in this world. If there is truly no one that has these materials, there will then be an auction using spirit stones. Fellow Taoists, it will be up to rate whether you will be able to acquire it." Someone from the crowd then said, "A grand treasure. And what does he want to exchange it with? Materials, medicine pills, or magic treasures? If there is something they want in particular, how about you tell us first? If we traded it away, we will definitely feel regretful." The white silhouette chuckled and said, "This item is difficult to describe in worldly terms. You will know what it is when the time comes. As for your worries, they are unfounded. The items that are traded for it are something that common cultivators would never let go." His bold tone had stirred an uproar in the cultivators in the hall, and they couldn't help but turn curious. Still, nobody had asked any further questions. At that moment, the silhouette appeared behind the jade table and grabbed one of the storage pouches in front of him. In a flash of black light, he took out something that resembled a jujube shining with dim black light. A yin jujube, born from a human tomb on the alignment of a yin year, yin month, and yin day, something that only occurs once every 300 years. Additionally, it was refined with a vengeful ghost's hatred by using a secret technique for a consummate 49 days until its reincarnation. The jujube may be taken as a pill itself or be refined into medicine. The minimum bid is 100,000 spirit stones, and the price must increase by 5,000 each time. The item's description had left Han Li in shock. He had never heard of such thing. 120,000, 140,000, 145,000 spirit stones. In the blink of an eye, the yin jujube was sold at a terrifying price. All the bidders had a faint black haze covering them, revealing them to be devil Dao cultivators. In the end, the yin jujube was sold for 190,000 spirit stones. The white silhouette accepted the spirit stones for it and proceeded to put up his next item on sale, a half-foot-long block of scarlet red metal that emitted an intense heat. Blood Yang iron, refined from scarlet sun iron and the primal souls of 3 fire attribute core formation cultivators. It is a rare material for refining yin fire treasures. The starting bid will be 150,000 spirit stones. Every bid will increase in 10,000 stones. 180,000 spirit stones. 200,000. Han Li had recalled hearing of this material before. Although there weren't many people bidding on it, they all had great financial resources and none of them were willing to let it go. Eventually, it was won at the price of 250,000 spirit stones. Ghostblight grass. Items brimming with evil chi were repeatedly taken out, and all of them were exchanged for vast numbers of spirit stones that far exceeded what was seen at the grand auction. Han Li stroked his storage pouch, and he couldn't help but wryly smile. He was somewhat worried that he wouldn't have enough spirit stones. Although he knew that he could exchange a few items for spirit stones before the trade meet, he didn't expect for the items that appeared to be so precious. The bids far exceeded the amount that appeared at the grand auction. Jade rubber. It is a worldly spiritual wood that is produced from a jade oak tree once every 1,000 years. It can be used to refine fantastical treasures and is an ideal material for mechanical puppets. The minimum bid will be 120,000 spirit stones, and each increasing bid must be 5,000 more. 150,000. When the white silhouette took out a white gelatinous object, Han Li suddenly felt lightning strike through his mind, and he shouted a bid without hesitation. Among nascent soul cultivators, there were only a few that still had an interest in refining puppets and odd treasures. As such, Han Li only had to compete with 4 people over the item, and managed to win the bid for 170,000 spirit stones, much to his delight. The white silhouette continued to auction more items, and 2 of them also caught his interest. resulting in him buying one at 190,000 and the other at 310,000 spirit stones. Since the last item was a particularly famous treasure, there was no choice but to furiously bid over it with the others, resulting in its extremely high price. These few items had consumed a small majority of the spirit stones in his bag. Fortunately, he was relieved to find that no more of his required materials had made an appearance. When the last item was sold off, and the storage pouches on the Jade table were finally empty, the auctioneer appeared rather pleased by the result. The auction for our items is concluded. Fellow Taoists may now trade of their own accord, but I will get the ugly talk out of the way first. Because these are unmonitored trades, we are not responsible for fake items or poor judgment. We only serve to provide the location and will not interfere with your matters so long as you don't violate our rules. And in accordance with our rules, if you wish to exchange any number of your items, you are required to give us 10,000 spirit stones at the end. Now then, you may all do as you please. With those few words, he quickly blurred to the side and sat down cross-legged, appearing to enter meditation. Unsurprisingly, several people from the crowd suddenly blurred and rushed to the stage in streaks of light. However, one red streak was clearly faster and was the first to arrive behind the table. The silhouette of red light then quickly cupped his hands in a salute and said in a cheerful tone, "Thank you for letting me go first. Your turn will come." When the other masses of light saw this, they had no choice but to return to their seat. And Li smiled when he saw this. Those who went first to exchange their goods would be in a more convenient position, as it would prevent others from acquiring what they needed. Of course, this only applied to more common items. There were many materials that were particularly obscure or weren't heavily desired. As such, a vast majority of cultivators wouldn't fight over the right to trade first. Since the materials Han Li lacked were more obscure, he wasn't in a hurry. The red silhouette then took out many rare materials and wanted to trade them exclusively for pill refinement. A moment later, he managed to exchange a large number of said materials and left the stage with a satisfied strut. The following traders had also experienced smooth proceedings and appeared to have gained quite a bit. However, there was a yellow silhouette that was trying to sell a sparkling blue metal for an ice attribute material that Han Li hadn't heard of before. He asked 3 times, but there was no one that would accept the offer, and he could only walk back dejectedly. Cultivators like this one gradually appeared in greater number down the line, and eventually several tens of people went up on stage, with most of them ending up empty-handed. It wasn't that the items weren't valuable, but that many felt that the terms of trade were unfavorable or were uninterested. It was clear to see that rarer items weren't always easier to trade. Of course, there were also cultivators that desired the materials, but didn't have the needed items to trade for it. They would often negotiate through voice transmission, but most were met with cold rejection. Only a sparse few succeeded, one of which included Han Li. In his case, it was quite simple. He exchanged several rare 1,000-year-old spirit herbs and a few high-grade demon cores for a material that he required. Although one might be able to occasionally find 1 or 2 of these at a market, they'd never be able to gather such a large quantity in a single instance. As such, the cultivator had agreed to the trade with only slight hesitation. In addition to this, Han Li managed to trade for 2 more required puppet materials with some items in his reserve. Now, he was only missing the 2 rarest materials. However, they were so incredibly scarce, he reckoned that ordinary eccentrics wouldn't use them to trade. Monarch's Soul Divergent spoke to Han Li. "Youngster Han, what do you plan on taking out? If they aren't of high enough quality, I fear that they won't be traded for." "I've already thought about it. Since a majority of the cultivators here are from the Devil Dao, don't I already possess their most sought-after material?" "Really, you're willing to part with it?" Monarch's Soul Divergence asked with amazement. "There is nothing I can do if they don't wish to part with them, but now that we've gathered everything except for the last 2 pieces, I can't have my efforts be in vain. If Senior's puppet is truly as formidable as you say, it is worth at least this much." Han Li chuckled and then glanced around the room. When a dismayed cultivator backed down from the stage without managing a single trade, Han Li calmly stepped forward and arrived behind the table. The cultivators in the hall turned their sights on him, wishing to see what rare wonders he would take out. With a twist of his hand, he produced 2 exquisite jade boxes, but he wasn't in a rush to open them. He glanced around the hall and spoke with a changed, hoarse voice. "This is a refinement material for precious Devil Dao treasures, 2 Devil Essence diamonds. I will exchange them for elemental jade and brilliant glow gem." With that said, he flicked his hand and the boxes all began to open, revealing dim black gems that were several inches large and released a faint black chi. Hanli collected 4 of them in the heavenly south when he dived into the depth of devilish chi below the giant whirlpool. Chapter 878. Devil Essence Diamonds, the material used to refine devil dragon blades. Did I hear correctly? Impossible. How could such an item appear in this world? Is it true? After Hanli finished speaking, an uproar surged through the hall. Many cultivators had shouted out in alarm. The white silhouette that had been meditating since the beginning suddenly opened his eyes in amazement, staring at the 2 devil essence diamonds in front of Hanli. To tell the truth, I wouldn't be trading these items if I were a devil Dao cultivator. As for whether it is genuine, if you are able to produce the items I require, I will allow you to carefully inspect them. Hanli's confident tone had silenced the doubtful, and all of them quietly looked at the devil essence diamonds with various expressions. Elemental jade and brilliant glow gems were rarely ever seen in this world, but they were less valuable than the diamonds and made the trade quite tempting. Greatly against everyone's expectations, the master of the trade meet, the white silhouette, suddenly said, I do have a brilliant glow gem, but because it was too precious, I didn't take it out for sale. If I have someone fetch this item, will you let me inspect the devil essence diamond? Hanli's face wore an astonished appearance, but he immediately said, I have no reason to doubt you. You can inspect them. The white silhouette nodded and sent off a streak of fiery light, disappearing through the ceiling of the room. Then, he slowly stood up and walked over to Hanli. When the other cultivators heard their conversation, there was another unrest, but this time not much was said. Since the white silhouette was sent to be in charge of the trade fair, he was certain to be vastly experienced. Everyone in the hall looked over with wide eyes to see what he would determine. As if in a display of familiarity, the white silhouette nimbly took the devil essence diamond into his hand and spit out a thread of white nascent flame. When the flames made contact with the diamond's black chi, the flame was thoroughly blocked from approaching. Excitement appeared on his face, and he grasped his hands in an incantation gesture, recalling the nascent flame and spitting out a ball of blue glacial chi. The chi covered the diamond, but it wasn't able to freeze it. The white silhouette's gaze flickered, and he raised his finger to it, pouring in a stream of black devilish chi into it. As a result, the chi was completely absorbed and the diamond showed no reaction. It's true, a genuine devil essence diamond. I want it. As soon as he said this, a masked cultivator wearing gray robes suddenly appeared 10 meters away. He saluted the white silhouette and handed over a jade box before disappearing from sight. This is a brilliant glow gem. Fellow Taoists should see if it is acceptable. The white silhouette handed over the box to Hanli. Hanli grabbed and opened it to reveal a pale yellow gemstone that glowed with a halo of faint purple light. It was nearly blinding to the eye. In a wave of happiness, he examined it as blue light flickered from his eyes. He then held the stone in between his fingers as he carefully examined it. While Hanli was examining the brilliant glow gem with a calm appearance, the white silhouette was completely shocked. He could only look at the gem for a short while, yet this unknown cultivator was able to stare at the crystal for such a long amount of time. Not bad, it is a top-quality brilliant light gem. Go ahead, take the devil essence diamond. Hanli then put away the gem into his storage pouch. Then I won't refuse. The white silhouette chuckled and carefully put away the diamond. He looked at the other devil essence diamond and said with a greedy tone, Now then, since there is no one else that wants to trade for it with the items you desire, I'm willing to purchase it at a high price or exchange for other rare materials. No matter the method, I will be sure to satisfy you. Who said that nobody had any materials for it? I have a piece of elemental jade. Wait, that item is mine. I forbid anyone else from having it. As soon as the white silhouette finished speaking, a woman and a man's voice suddenly spoke out from the crowd. The man's voice was deep and thunderous, while the woman's was smooth and sweet. Afterwards, streaks of black and silver flashed forward before Hanli. When this happened, the other cultivators began to fill the hall with whispers. While only a few people knew of brilliant glow gems, elemental jade was resoundingly famous in the cultivation world as a top-grade material for refining jade magic treasures. However, this material was incredibly rare and would only appear in the cultivation world once every 500 years. Now that someone had produced it, there were many that were envious and shocked. It appeared these cultivators did possess such rare treasures, but that they were unwilling to reveal them. When the white silhouette heard the man's voice, His expression wavered from the shock, though it was concealed by the mist of light surrounding him. The black figure ignored the slender silver mass that arrived first and stared at the white silhouette, forcefully saying, "Second Elder Yi, you dare to violate the rules of the trade meet and control the devil essence diamond." Although one couldn't see his true appearance, his figure was tall and his voice was cold. "Brother Kun is far too worrisome. How could I do such a thing? I was simply giving this fellow Taoist a suggestion. Since you two are here now, I won't further interfere with the matter." The white silhouette spoke with wry voice and saluted him before returning back from his original location. "How tactful." The black figure snorted and held his hands behind his back. The silver form to the side stood gracefully in place, as if somewhat stunned by this display. A series of whispers then sounded out from all around them. "Kun, could he be the austere blood sect elder Kun Wuji? His voice really sounds like it's him. Apart from that late nascent soul cultivator, who could be so bold?" When Han Li heard this, his expression changed. This black figure was a late nascent soul cultivator from one of the illustrious Great 10 Devil Dao sects. After a moment of silence, the silver form let out a shallow breath and said, "So it was Elder Kun of the austere blood sect. I've been too disrespectful. Do you also have the materials this fellow Taoist needs? In that case, I will step down and give the item to you." It appeared the woman wasn't about to give up on the devil essence diamond, with regards to her opponent's cultivation and identity. Kun Wuji chuckled and said with an eerie tone, "Although I don't have elemental jade or brilliant glow gems, I have materials on an equal level. If you're wise, you'd best step down." The silver form let out a chuckle and said, "That will be quite a problem. I've been wanting a devil essence diamond for quite a long time. How about this? I'd be willing to hand over the item to Brother Kun if this fellow Taoist prefers your materials over my elemental jade." "Fine, since I'm not an unreasonable person, I'll have him decide it." Surprising many, Kun Wuji displayed complete confidence in his words. Han Li was indifferent to who the devil essence diamond would belong to. Although he felt unhappy about having to go through this trouble, he was somewhat relieved to see that the elemental jade had made an appearance. At that moment, she raised her hand and sent out a green wooden box onto the table. There was a faint silver talisman sealed on top of it. "Fellow Taoist should see whether my elemental jade is genuine," the silver form said with a sweet voice. Kun Wuji sneered and then took out various jade boxes of differing sizes and also placed them on the table. "You should understand that the items I've taken out are far more valuable than some elemental jade." Han Li didn't speak any further and pointed to green wooden box, summoning it into his hand in a gust of wind. With his other hand, he brushed it and released the talisman from it, causing the box to open and reveal a round piece of rainbow jade. Curiously, it didn't glow with a multicolor light, but was filled with abundant spiritual qi. Han Li held the piece of jade in his hand and examined it for a moment before forcefully suppressing the excitement in his heart. He nodded to the silver silhouette and said, "Not bad, it's genuine elemental jade." With that said, he shut the box and turned his sights on the other boxes on the table. He wished to simply trade for the elemental jade and leave matters there, but he wasn't about to rashly offend a late nascent soul cultivator. Furthermore, from his bold tone, Han Li was somewhat curious about what the boxes contained. Kun Wuji pointed at the table, and the lids of the boxes began to open of their own accord. Phoenix fall wood, soul-focusing stone, myriad wheel flower. Before Han Li could recognize what was inside, observant cultivators from the crowd began to name the objects in the boxes, causing most of them to gasp. The silver form was also deeply shocked and turned to look at Han Li in alarm. It was no wonder why Kun Wuji was so confident. They were incredibly rare and above the elemental jade in rarity. The myriad wheel flower in particular was no less valuable when compared to the devil essence diamond. Equals. Han Li's gaze wasn't focused on the most valuable material on the table, the myriad wheel flower, but on the faint golden ore. When the silver form saw this, her heart sank. Han Li raised his hand, summoning the golden ore and closely examining it. When Kun Wuji saw this, he chuckled and proudly said, "It seems my auric essence had caught your eye. You're quite discerning. Sword cultivators will gain a massive increase in strength with this, and I reckon that only I was able to acquire a piece this large in the entire Great Jin." "I will exchange the diamond for this auric essence," Han Li said. "Please wait, don't you want my elemental jade?" "Quiet, do you truly wish to anger me?" Kun Wuji's initial joy suddenly changed to fury, and his body released an astonishing pressure, suppressing the silver form. Han Li watched from the side and saw her recoil a few steps before she managed to recover. Kun Wuji then grabbed the diamond in front of Han Li and examined it with immense excitement. It's a true devil essence diamond. My trip was worth it. If those old devils knew that one would appear at this trade fair, they would be filled with regret. He put away the diamond and wildly roared with laughter. With a wave of his sleeve, he took away the remaining jade boxes on the table and made his way to the entrance of the hall in a blur. The white silhouette then said, "Brother Kun, don't you want to remain behind until the end and look at the grand treasure I have to offer?" "What grand treasure is valuable to me? Now that I have the devil essence diamond, I wish to hastily return and refine the pure devilish chi it contains. I'm not in the mood for any grand treasure." Cackling with laughter, Kun Wuji's silhouette flashed from the hall's teleportation formation, and he disappeared without a trace. Refined devilish chi. Han Li was surprised, but then came to a sudden realization. These devil essence diamonds were something that were condensed in the deepest depths of devilish chi and should contain a significant concentration of devilish chi. A devil Dao cultivator would be sure to gain many benefits from it. It was no wonder why Kun Wuji had no interest in any other treasures after he managed to acquire it. At that moment, Silver Form was furious from having the devil essence diamond seized from her, and reached out to recall the elemental jade back into her grasp. Suddenly, Han Li held the box to the table and said, "Wait, I also want this."